Just after 10 is the time you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, for which I thank you. Listen, how many times have you heard me say that two things can be true at the same time? It's there's a reason why it's almost a cliche. It's a figure of speech, and it flies in the face of modern discourse, doesn't it, in a way? You've got to pick a side, you've got to be 100% one way or the other. Everything's a zero-sum game. And I didn't talk about this story yesterday. Shall I tell you why I didn't talk about this story yesterday? I don't think I would use the phrase, I protect my mental health sometimes when I'm on the radio, because I can't, I've got to go into the stories that are most current. But the deaths of these two police officers, just the horrible nature of this story, following fast upon another incident that left several people dead in an apparent sort of joyriding incident. But it was the deaths not of the joyriders, and forgive me for that, but of PC's Matthew Blades and Tom Clough, and the photographs smiling out from the newspapers, and the thought that you have as well of the families that are now bereft. The conversation we nearly had yesterday, and the reason I didn't have it was I just thought it would be too sad, was about what it's like to be either in the police service or the loved ones, the family members of somebody in the police service, and that knowledge that every morning there is a danger that your day will end in the way that the days of the families of Matthew Blades and Tom Clough ended on Saturday. A Volkswagen Passat travelling the wrong way down the A66, a pursuit of which had been called off shortly before, and the collision with the police officer's car when they were driving along in a perfectly normal fashion, looking out for the trouble that had been caused, or the trouble represented by this car. 12 people have been arrested on suspicion of various offences, including being involved with organised crime. This is part of the investigation into the crash that killed the two police officers and 5 others. There's not a lot you can say with absolute certainty, except that Nigel Farage won't be making any public comment about this, or delivering any speeches, or calling a press conference, because there's no way to turn it into a story about immigration. So his levels of concern will be low, let's say, to be kind. For the rest of us who live in the real world, it's a story which has very quickly moved towards social media. And headlines in both the cheaper prints and the more thoughtful newspapers both focus upon this. War on deadly joyride vids is on the front page of The Sun this morning. PM TikTok vow after crash kills 7. And in the newspaper, TikTok trend blamed for rise in fatal wrong way crashes. Supposedly, content that promotes crime is prohibited on these platforms. Videos glamorising dangerous driving, however, are very, very easy to find. Every now and then, we have a moment, don't we, where we realise that there is a lot more to heaven and earth than is dreamt of in your philosophy, Horatio. You realise that there's all sorts of things going on in the world, sometimes on quite a high level, about which you know absolutely nothing. Shall I give you a low-level example of that? I'll give you a very sweet and uncontroversial example of what I'm talking about. When they reveal the lineup for Strictly Come Dancing, and you realise that you've become one of those people that recognises barely anybody on the list, and you ask your own children about some of the names that you're not familiar with, and they don't know either. And they're, in my case, 18 and 20. So you realise it's not even generational anymore. It's to do with orbits. It's to do with spinning orbits, some of which we can inhabit and some of which we can't. They are, of course, also intersecting. They are Venn diagrams. You can be in several orbits at the same time, but there will still be orbits about which you know nothing. This is not obviously a motoring story, except in a way it is, of course, because I generally don't exist, as you know, because I wang on about it all the time. I don't generally find myself engaging with stories that are to do with motoring. So I am among the last people on the internet whose algorithms are likely to start delivering up footage of young men driving at great speed and illegally and exposing themselves and other road users to enormous danger. And here's the kicker, because the algorithm thinks I will enjoy it. And that's the first uncomfortable element of this conversation. I don't mean the tragic element. The tragic elements are obvious. But the first uncomfortable element of this conversation that nobody seems to be pointing out, despite the headlines talking about the war on deadly joyride vids, there's a sort of moral panic going on here. Is that these are the baddies, these people in these cars who I'm not going to call joyriders again because that's a ludicrous misnomer, isn't it? There's no joy involved. Well, except for the point I'm about to make to you. You're chalking up 2.5 million views for this kind of thing. That's like, you know, evidence of something a little sicker than the things being done by the criminals, isn't it? You like this stuff. All right, let me rephrase that a little bit more diplomatically. We like this stuff. If it's an online craze, it's only an online craze because people are lapping it up, you know? It's all very well sitting here and complaining about what Elon Musk has done to Twitter, but people on some level must love all the racism, otherwise the people doing all the racism wouldn't be making all the money out of Elon Musk's re-engineered social media platform. Do you see what I mean? What would the equivalent be? I suppose tabloids or all moral panics sort of slightly reapportion blame, don't they? When in fact, the blame, there's a chicken and egg going on here. Would you care about it if you didn't know about it? No. Would you care about it as much as you care about it if great effort wasn't being put into making you care about it? No. But do you care about it? Yes. Do you care about it? Yes. And of course, the algorithm doesn't care whether you enjoy it or not. As David's just pointed out, it could be that the algorithm recognises you can't look away. You find it horrific. Although I don't think that's going to apply in the case of people enjoying these videos because it reminds them of watching films like Fast and Furious, which despite not having a petrol head gene, I have enjoyed some episodes of over the years. So it's impossible to unravel that for me. You might be able to. You know the number. You might be able to unravel the simple truth that people are watching this stuff. And the people who are watching it are creating or are displaying an appetite that these criminals are feeding. The people, I'll say that again because it's a horrible thought, right? The people who are watching it are displaying an appetite that the criminals are feeding. So whether it was in Belfast last week or in Cleveland this weekend, if, and of course there are some details yet to be fully confirmed, but if it turns out and some of the people involved in these incidents have a little bit of form, a little bit of history in the field, not just of criminality, but also of posting these kind of films, if that's why they were doing it, they were feeding an appetite. And that appetite is kind of on all of us, isn't it? So the question I want you to answer is how much of the blame for these events, and that's the headline in the iNewspaper today, TikTok trend blamed for rise in fatal wrong-way crashes. How much of the blame can you actually put on TikTok? And listen, I'm not going to give you a selection of other people to blame because I'm not the editor of The Sun, but I am wondering whether you bear some blame. Are you going to ring me and tell me that you watch these videos and enjoy them? I don't think you are you? Because you're reflecting, I presume, upon that appetite that these young men are feeding. It's your appetite. So how much blame do we put on social media? And that's when I come back round to the point that two things can be true at the same time. Because if social media wasn't amplifying and spreading these films, if you weren't accruing clicks, and the reason why anything unpleasant on the internet exists is because it's the only affirmation that these people get. So whether they are trolls, whether they are criminals posting evidence of their criminality, whether they are I don't know what word to use instead of joyriders, but you know what I'm talking about. Dangerous driving, the glamorizers of dangerous driving, and they're counting the clicks that they get and they're looking at the likes. They are, even if they're politicians, if that's where they're getting their kicks, they are leading desiccated lives. They are leading lives of emptiness. And they are persuaded that the holes and the chasms inside themselves can be filled, just as some people think they can fill those holes inside themselves with money or sex or public approval or approbation. Some people think they can fill the holes inside themselves with likes and clicks and thumbs ups and whatever else it may be, encouraging comments from other internet users. And we are all internet users. So we are all, in a way, responsible. And that's when the headlines saying war on deadly joyride vids and TikTok trend blamed for rise in fatal wrong-way crashes, they kind of miss the point that the audience is the problem. Isn't it? 0345 60973 is the number that you need. Are we ducking something here, or am I do have a habit of overthinking things. It's possible I'm overthinking things, but I don't think I am here. The audience is the problem. You know, by all means take them down, but let's not pretend that they haven't been serving a purpose, that they are a supply that is caused by a demand. People want to watch these films. Millions of people are watching these films. By all means, remind me several times that some people will be repulsed by these films and the algorithm will keep serving them up because of the amount of seconds that you've spent watching it being clocked somewhere on a supercomputer and telling that algorithm that you will watch more of this stuff if it keeps getting sent to you. But I don't think that's going to be the majority of people who are watching this stuff. They're going to be finding it exciting. Hashtag Fast and Furious, hashtag Joyrider, hashtag, NWA song about the police lyric. Hashtag whatever you like. But hashtags are designed to draw attention to things. And these people doing this thing, which is apparently, and this is what I meant by the orbits that are revolving without you noticing that they even exist. Suddenly I'm aware of a world I didn't know existed. A world that is not just online, of course, because these crimes, these tragedies have unfolded offline. They've unfolded on roads. They've unfolded in lives. It is PC Matthew Blades and PC Tom Clough and their families who will be recognising that this is absolutely real, hideously real. Downing Street describing the glorification of dangerous driving for clips and entertainment is utterly disgraceful. We have raised the issue with the social media companies. So, I'm not here to judge you, actually. I'm here to ask you why people watch these videos. And again, I can do that, I think, can't I? Because you know that the petrolhead gene passed me by. I had a brief moment when I was 11 or 12 years old, when I thought that cars were exciting. But for the rest of my life, with a few very rare exceptions, I've been left curiously cold by the whole world of automotives. Why do people watch these films? I think I can ask you that today. I wouldn't have asked you that yesterday, but I can ask you that today. Why do people watch these films? And how much blame lies, not necessarily with the social media companies, but with their customers, with their users? Is that too uncomfortable a question? Why do people watch these films? 0345 60973. Why do you watch these films? Perhaps until this weekend you didn't realise what you were part of and contributing to. Why do you watch them? 0345 60973. And is it, and this is a question I really want you to answer, is it a cop-out? It feels like a cop-out to lay it all at the feet of the social media companies. I would be fully behind legislation that forced them not to broadcast this stuff, but it feels a little bit like coming after the event, doesn't it? So what I want you to tell me is why people watch these films and whether or not you can blame this phenomenon and therefore these tragedies on the social media companies. It's becoming a bit of a camouflage. It's people that commit crimes, people that do terrible things. If you're posting the footage on social media, it's still people who have done it. Do you see what I mean? So why do people watch these films? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. It's 19 minutes after 10. And a little bit more sort of philosophically, I suppose, is TikTok really to blame for this stuff? Or is it actually a little bit more complicated than that? Hit the numbers now. You will get through.
James O'Brien on LBC.
And here's another thought. Listen, again, it's not a genre of television that I enjoy particularly, but I'm not unaware of programmes like Police Camera Action and other shows that essentially, I mean, don't they glorify dangerous driving? I mean, admittedly, from the point of view of admiring the police who are conducting the pursuits, but what is the difference between someone filming themselves being an idiot and a television company broadcasting footage of someone being an idiot for our entertainment? And of course, one man's idiot is another man's speed freak, another man's speed demon. Films have car chases in them for a reason. Some of the most magnificent moments in cinema contain car chases. But I don't know, I'm just trying to... What's the word I'm looking for? I'm just trying to worry at something a little bit more nuanced than these headlines allow. Let's all blame TikTok. Well then, why are you watching Channel 5 tonight? And a programme which will feature footage every bit as high speed as the footage that these characters were quite probably preparing to stick on the internet. 0345 6060 973. Is it the same? Is it the same thing that we're feeding? And now the moral panic just invites us to pretend that what's happening on TikTok, oh, that's outrageous, that's disgusting. And now you'll tune into your TV show that does exactly the same. So I don't know. Anyway, I just want your help in thinking about this today. Tony's in Greenock. Tony, what made you pick up the phone?
Yeah, hi James. You were talking about how people consciously go onto TikTok to look at these things. There's also an element of it subconsciously happening. I was saying to your producer there, my wife looks at TikTok videos, and we'll be sitting of an evening, and say we'll be talking about, want to go to Inveraray for a couple of days. She'll get TikToks for hotels in Inveraray and things like that, or we'll be talking about the incidents on TV of what's been happening and the crashes and that sort of thing. And she says, you'll never believe what's come up on my TikTok, and it's videos of these things. So there's an element of you just talk about these things. You don't consciously want to see them, but you're having a conversation, and somehow your phone seems to pick up that's what you're talking about, and these things appear.
My friend Alexis Conran, who does a show on Channel 5 in the mornings, has written a brilliant Substack about this, actually. It's not a case that your phone is sort of listening to you. It's a little bit more complicated than that. But, it's to do with almost every aspect of your life being tracked by the technology. Therefore, the technology can predict with quite chilling accuracy sometimes the things that you are most likely to be interested in. So, it will know where you went on your last holiday, for example, and it will know that it's the time of year where you might be thinking about a holiday again, and it will know that the bank holiday is coming up, and last bank holiday you did a thing. So things will start appearing in front of you that are somewhat spooky, but actually it's reflective of your past, using your past to predict your future. I don't want to detoxify what we're talking about, though, because the blame here, and I don't know if blame is quite the right word, but the market for this footage is huge, right? It's not just on TikTok, but it is on television. Police Interceptors, Police Camera Action, all of these shows glorify these behaviours, and today we're all supposed to sit here clutching our pearls and blaming it all on TikTok. And I despise most elements of what social media has become in recent years. I'm not here to defend them or help them off the hook. I'm here to point out that we're being a bit hypocritical, aren't we?
I think you've got a point there, but I mean, for me, if I ever watched a programme where there was like police interceptors or something like that.
But you know that millions of people do.
Yeah, it just scares the bejesus out of me, because I look at that and think, my God, these people are driving like nutters.
Yeah, I do as well, but I mean, we both recognise that we're not necessarily in the minority, but there are millions of people who both enjoy watching them on television and then enjoy watching them when they pop up on their social media. So if you stop TikTok from posting these things, these crimes, these incidents would be less likely to happen. I think that's true, and yet at the same time, if people didn't want to watch them, they wouldn't be appearing on people's screens in the first place.
You're controlling it a bit more if you don't allow it to be on TikTok. But if it's like a Channel 5 programme or something like that, it's a more controlled environment, whereas any person with a phone can go on and put what they like and to an extent glorify what they're doing. I think the point of police inspectors, police interceptors,
TV shows,
is to say, look, this is highly dangerous. This is stupid. This is.
I disagree.
These guys
I disagree. No, it's not a public safety announcement, Tony. Nobody's tuning in to watch it like Charlie the Cat back in the day, telling you not to get in cars with strangers. People are watching it because they find it thrilling. Surely. I don't know whether my lack of petrol head genes makes me supremely qualified to be conducting this conversation or completely unqualified. Because I presume it's exciting. Do you mean, why do people watch contestants on Top Gear trying to drive as quickly as they possibly can around a track? What's the appeal of Formula One, despite all the dangers that it entails? And yet you can say that's regulated and that's professional and that's got health and safety. But the fundamental thrill of watching people travel at great speed is common to all of these phenomena, isn't it? Isn't it?
I guess so.
It is, mate.
There's probably a base element there of speed that, you know, and if I was a younger version of me, might be more engaged with it. But, you know,
well, that's the question.
Being long in the tooth, it's not something I'm.
No, fair enough. But I mean, on the board is the question of why you watch this stuff, and is it the same? Because that is really uncomfortable, right? If you are watching this stuff and the thrill you get from it is the same thrill that you get from watching legal or regulated excess speeds. I could be getting things mixed up a bit. Of course I could. It wouldn't be the first time. But from the outside looking in, with a sense of befuddlement and horror at what is unfolding here, I'm trying to work out what we're looking at. And it seems to me that what we're looking at is not an isolated incident. It's not some weird thing that's sprouted up in the dark corners of TikTok. It is an appetite that is already extant and is already very well fed, that is now feasting upon new prey. And the prey is people filming themselves, committing crimes, endangering their own lives and endangering each other. What I want you to do, because as I keep saying, I'm not judging anybody here, because I'm pretty sure if I'd been built a little bit differently, I'd love a lot of the TV programs that we're talking about. But if you do enjoy watching the legal and regulated stuff, how do you feel about the suggestion that your appetite for excitement, your appetite for thrills, is the same appetite that these? And a lot of words are coming into the studio like scumbags. And it's not one of the days when I'm going to caution people from using language like that. You'll understand why I'm not going to use it myself. But I find the people engaging in this sort of behaviour profoundly contemptible, even as I acknowledge their own families are mourning their own deaths. It's the utter contempt for other people's lives and safety that I find unforgivable, in fact, and almost incomprehensible. But what they are doing is a kind of unregulated or illegal version of what you like watching. So how much to blame do you think you might be? And how much of the buck are we passing on to social media because some of these questions are too complicated and they make us too uncomfortable? The number you need is 0345 60 60973. Parliament, for the final time tomorrow, will remain in recess. They're back next Wednesday for PMQs and they're back at work next week, which means that this curious August habit of stories that we wouldn't necessarily concern ourselves with continues for another week. And just like Tom Swarbrick before me, I am tempted later in the programme to return to the tale of the fox biting a baby's head, but with a slight twist on the question of what it is that makes us decide one wild animal is vermin and one wild animal is not. Before that, though, more on this. And with the time approaching 10:30, Dominic Ellis has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
10:32 is the time. So why do people watch these clips? And is it, and I hope it isn't, but is it the same reason that prompts them to watch some of these programmes on television that feature police chases? Quite a hefty criticism here, which I think I'm going to have to agree with from Helen. Your own unconscious bias is showing, James. You've referenced TikTok and YouTube and TV shows, but you failed to mention Grand Theft Auto, a video game franchise which literally trains your brain to be rewarded with dopamine for criminal driving. I'm not saying that all these idiots have been playing it, but I can see how taking it offline into either watching or participating in real life could be appealing to some people chasing the high. So, yeah, there it is. I enjoy playing that game. It has never prompted... I had one occasion when I was driving my Volkswagen Polo through West London and I saw someone on a high-speed motorbike and something in my brain flicked. And I found myself envisioning or picturing myself knocking the person off the bike so I could steal it and roar away, which you do in the game. So if you can't answer the question of what's different, then you have to concede I've got half a point this morning. But it's only half a point, I think. Archie's in Norwich. Archie, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. How you doing?
All good, mate. What's on your mind?
I was saying to your producer, I think a lot of it starts in adolescence, and particularly recently in terms of, I mean, I'm only 22, but I have this sort of distinct memory of being like 13 and sat in a geography class next to a friend of mine who was watching like a really horrific video, and I can't remember specifically what it was.
Driving based.
I think it wasn't driving based, that specific ones, but there was lots of that sort of thing that would go around within a WhatsApp group that they had, because this was, I think, before TikTok was either invented or getting popular. And I think that sort of morbid curiosity starts on any platform. It doesn't really matter whether it's TikTok or YouTube or on somebody's PlayStation or whatever it might be. I think that just comes in at that age when people don't understand what they're seeing. And then they go so quickly that this is exciting, or they just, it's the morbid curiosity of it. And even as much as people can avoid it, like myself, I'm not actually on TikTok, but plenty of videos that I've seen, there's a video of some people from Liverpool who are like driving around and trying to avoid the police, which is really popular. And it's shared around as being a really funny video, but they're driving on pavements and driving down the wrong side of the road type of thing. And I think that can get circulated no matter what platform you're on. The only thing I could see that one was on Instagram. Don't hang on a minute. Don't get the wrong end of the stick. I'm not putting the blame. I mean, the headlines have mentioned TikTok, and I presume that some of the characters involved in the crimes that we're discussing have got history on that particular platform. But no one's suggesting for a minute that one is necessarily more to blame than any other. And you're describing a kind of desensitization process, being exposed to violence or bad behaviour of any kind, and being less shocked by it with each new exposure. But what's the kick here? What? So that you mentioned this crowd in Liverpool. Obviously, I'm not familiar with it, but they are endangering other people all the time if they're driving on pavements and they're doing things like that. And yet, people watching it are thrilled and excited. That message from Helen in Manchester is going to haunt me for the rest of this show. It's probably got more to do with Grand Theft Auto, some of this stuff, than it has with television programmes. Doesn't it? I mean, you're driving, you're bombing around Vice City, literally almost, encouraged to, I don't know, does that sound pathetic? I'm supposed to be a big defender of video games. No, not at all. I think that's completely right. I think it's just the thing where it comes in from like a younger age. Again, not saying that you or anyone is putting a specific blame on whatever, but it's whatever platform people see it on.
Why do people watch the films of these clowns in Liverpool that you describe? Why do people watch those films? Put it into words for me.
I think because in that instance with that specific video, I think it was supposed to be funny. Like, it was like a thing where it was like...
All right, then the other films, the so-called joyride vids that even the Prime Minister is now getting exercised about, why do people watch those films?
I think because it makes them excited. As long as they're not seeing anyone directly getting hurt, or maybe people do want to see that video,
until they do. And we're back to your original point about desensitisation. 10:37 is the time. I don't know. I love you, James, but you're wrong on this. I don't watch Police Intercept and similar programmes for the thrill of the chases. I watch it in the hope that the police will catch the criminals and bring them to justice. TikToks are filmed from the perspective of the wrongdoers, and anyone enjoying them are frankly sick. Yeah, except they're hoping that their
people prevail, as we've just heard from Archie. Some people are watching these stuff in the hope of cheering along the people trying to escape from the police. I don't know. Anyway, someone who will know what he's talking about on this subject, unlike me, is James May, former presenter of Top Gear, who's on the line from Twickenham. Unless, of course, you're an imposter. I hope that your credentials have been properly checked, James.
I think they have, yes. Good morning.
Good morning. What's on your mind?
Well, I just wanted to pull you up on one thing. You are talking about the petrol head gene,
yes,
which you don't have, and I don't blame you. But please understand that real petrol heads and car enthusiasts hate the sort of thing you're talking about, because it ultimately gives cars a bad name. We're not watching it thinking, wow, that's fantastic. People who really love cars and people who like driving cars fast go to things like track days where everything is regulated and everything is very safety conscious. We're really not into this stuff. It's very, very bad for our hobby.
That makes perfect sense to me, and possibly pushes me from thinking I'm supremely qualified to be conducting this conversation to thinking that I'm perhaps uniquely unqualified. But I mean, bearing in mind that you are a member of a different tribe then from the people who enjoy these kind of films, why do people watch them, do you think?
Well, I don't watch.
No, I know you
many
don't.
Of them,
Nor do I. But we can
pushed at me.
Yeah.
And I haven't really. I'm not a particular fan of things like Grand Theft Auto, and I don't play very many video games. But I sort of agree with you. When I have watched the police camera action type things, it's in the hope that people either well, not wipe themselves out, but mess it up,
get caught.
Or they get caught and given a bit of a slap. I don't really know what drives. I mean, what seems to be a fashion now for driving down motorways and dual carriageways the wrong way. It's just absolute madness. I can't imagine what would drive somebody to do that and think it was fun.
Well, I mean, if you can't imagine it, then what the hell chance have the rest of us got? Because taking on board all of your points about the difference between being an enthusiast for this kind of thing and being an idiot, you to coin a phrase, James, you feel the need for speed. You are excited by high performance cars doing high performance things, and yet you find this as baffling, I think, as I do. The fun of this process.
Well, I've just driven. I'm on my way back to London from Wiltshire. I've obviously pulled over at the side of the road because that would have been too much ammunition for you otherwise. But I've driven a long way up the A303 and the M3, all of it on the correct side of the road at fairly reasonable speeds, I must say.
So here we are, completely befuddled as to what is going on, except perhaps for the idea that it's a little bit too simplistic to blame it all on TikTok, or indeed blame it all on. Certainly, to blame it all on a petrol head gene.
I would agree with you about not automatically blaming TikTok and social media, because I've always thought that's a bit like blaming Rymans for people that things write on A4 pads.
Yeah.
And I don't know that necessarily seeing it. I mean, some of this stuff does crop up on my. I mean, I use Twitter quite a lot, X as it's now known, and I do see some of these things pop up because they're pushed into your feed, but it doesn't make me want to do it. And I did watch a documentary about World War II the other day, but I didn't then go and bomb Dresden.
Thank goodness. I don't know if you're aware of it, but I do have a little thing that I do for when people contribute to the programme from a position of unlikely qualification. So I'm going to do that for you, James May, if I may.
I'm Ray Liotta, and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. If you build it, they will come.
That's the biggest compliment I can pay you. So thank you
very much.
Well, no, thank you very much. It is 10:41, and if James May, whose career, of course, has been built not just on cars, he also does some really good stuff about toys. But if he is as baffled by this as I am, then clearly to attribute it to some sort of contagious petrol head gene is incorrect. So no one can actually, or no one yet has answered the question of why people watch this footage and what it is they are getting out of it that distinguishes it in a way from things that are not criminal, except the desire to see the criminals caught. If you're watching a television programme, you want to see the criminals caught. If you're watching the criminals, if you're watching this footage being posted from the criminals' perspective, is it literally just cops and robbers? You want the robbers to win. And those of us who are slightly more responsible citizens want the cops to win. 10:42 is the time. Sarah is in Hove. Sarah, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Nice to talk to you. My heart is fluttering extraordinarily having listened to James May.
Do you have a crush on him? Yes, I thought you might, Sarah. It's nothing to do with me, your fluttering heart, is it? I'm just the landlord of this joint. What do you want to say?
Bless it. Well, what I want to say is, obviously, this is a very, very complex issue, goes far outside of cars and everything. I was a teacher for 40 years. I know that all young men have a desperate need to be dangerous at a certain time in life, right? And, in the past, lots of tribes who had initiation ceremonies, history of us with things like scouting and stuff like that, have tried to create a structured environment for them to do some dangerous stuff and begin to experience what it's really like, but in relative safety. None of that exists anymore. We've got millions of cars on the road. Cars are the thing. Cars are the go-to medium for being dangerous. So this is then being exploited by all the social media channels who put this stuff on because they know people are going to be driven to watch it because it's the only access they have to being dangerous. And then some of them, sadly, go out and do it.
There's no, I mean, you say sadly, it's hard to muster up sympathy for the young men involved in these crimes.
Absolutely.
Except the most basic human sympathy, but they are entirely responsible not only for their own deaths, but also for the deaths of PC Matthew Blades and PC Tom Clough. We make no bones about that.
No.
And pointing out that this is a social media phenomenon doesn't take off a single scintilla of their responsibility for all 7 of these deaths. But what you say about young men and danger is just true, isn't it? It's just historically true.
It is historically true. And the problem is that, I have a partner who is in his 60s. He's a petrol head. He loves to drive fast. We have to do regular trips abroad so he can drive faster than he's allowed
but legally
to drive
and therefore responsibly. The thrill is different. I'm trying to think of an analogy for someone like me who doesn't really do it in cars, but those things that I would enjoy doing in a properly regulated environment, I wouldn't dream of doing in public.
Frankly, he would do it here if he didn't have opportunities to go and do it where it's legal.
Okay.
And if he didn't have a structure behind him, which is me, providing those opportunities and making them okay so that he doesn't need to do it in an illegal way.
Well, thank God he's got you, and goodness knows where he'd be if he didn't. I thought that you were being a bit more, what would the word be? Not excusing him, but not lumping him in with the people doing wrong. In fact, you're saying if it wasn't for you and opportunity, he would indeed be doing the things that are wrong. Although your point about violence has triggered an extraordinary response, actually, and all of it positive. You're just right. Middle-aged men forget what young men were like. It's one of the great, boons of maturity, or one of the great curses of getting older. Sometimes I catch myself thinking, you scumbag yobbos, and I need to give my head a little bit of a wobble and remember some of the stuff that we considered to be relatively good fun when we were young. I had one friend, and not even putting other people in danger, but I had one friend who would come out of nightclubs in the middle of central London and climb scaffolding. That was his thing. That was the thing that he did, in no fit state, frankly, to drive a car, and yet he would absolutely climb scaffolding, and we thought it was hilarious. Not quite hilarious enough ever to join him, but now you look at that stupid yobbo. What on earth does he think he's doing? 30 years ago, 40 years, no, not quite that, or 35 years ago, that was just my mate. As is often the way on these matters, Mike Skinner has the last word. This text has been sent anonymously, but it quotes a track from, is it A Grand Don't Come for Free? Is it from the streets? It's certainly from the streets. Geezers need excitement. If their lives don't provide them this, they incite violence. Common sense, simple common sense. There you go, the words of the streets, reaching parts that other philosophers have failed completely to arrive at.
James O'Brien on LBC.
49 is the time. My ordinarily bleeding heart liberalism on hold today because I can't muster up anything close to, nor what I want to, anything other than contempt, deep contempt for the people who engage in this sort of behaviour. But the question of why you post it on social media, of course, is a little bit more nuanced. Why would you post anything hideous on social media? Why do people troll? Why do racists do racism? And the answer is they get something out of it. And I guess the more empty your life is, the more likely you are to get something out of being vile on social media. I mean, it's a tragedy, but I suppose the worst thing you can say to somebody in that sort of situation is, have you really got nothing better to do with your time? To which they answer, no, I haven't. I really haven't. And then you got nowhere else to go. You're like Alan Partridge in that clip where you just sort of go, oh, okay. You've actually got nothing better to do than, no, I've got nothing better to do than this. This is my life. This is what I do. Okay. That is a zeitgeist issue. That's something about our age. There's another story in the news today about Rupert Lowe making more money now, posting hate on the social on X, on Twitter, or at least making as much money doing that via what Elon Musk has done to Twitter than he does actually being an MP. So I think it was Sandy Shaw who sang Puppet on a String, wasn't it? But it would appear very few people are immune to the thrill of social media approbation, whether you are channeling Joseph Goebbels or driving cars at enormous speed. The rewards are there, whether they're financial or whether they are simply sort of metrics, simply clicks and giggles. That's a question for our age, but the question about where this behaviour comes from is very, very specific to people who engage in this sort of behaviour. And James May's point about genuine car enthusiasts wanting these idiots banged up even more than the average person does. Not his phrase, it's a phrase that McNoodles has attributed to him. James May making a fantastic point there. Car enthusiasts want these idiots banged up probably more than the average person does, is one that was entirely missing from my analysis, which is why this is a phone-in show. Neil's in Bedford. Neil, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James. How are you doing?
I'm all good, mate. What's on your mind?
So
I'm going to sort this delay. Is it nerves or is it a delay on the line? I'm going to bear with you and we'll find out. But there's nothing to be nervous about. It's only me.
Okay. So I'm a driving instructor and I have been for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
So I've seen this on many, many different occasions. And one of the biggest things that I've noticed is that a lot of young people seem to think that driving is actually like a video game.
Really? You would say that as a driving instructor? Because I've had a couple of people, I think there's one on the other line actually, cross about the idea that video games have any role to play in this conversation.
No, I would actually say that it does have a major factor. And the reason I say that is because we've had some very close calls because they're driving too fast, they're driving too close, they're taking too many risks. I pulled them over and actually said, right, what will actually happen if we were to collide here? And their answer is, I'd have a crash.
Yeah.
In that blasé response.
And that's because their only experience up until that point has been via a screen.
Yeah.
Actually, I believe you. I mean, you're not speaking ex cathedra. You're not the Pope channeling the word of God unchallenged. So people are perfectly entitled to not believe you or to challenge what you're saying. But I believe you. I believe that if I got behind the wheel of a car for the very first time after 5 years straight of playing Grand Theft Auto Vice City, I would have been a very different pupil for you from the one that I would have been if I'd been reading Narnia books and playing Jet Set Willy.
Yeah, and the sad thing is that the vast majority of new drivers between the ages of 17 to 24, 1 in 5 is likely to have a serious accident within the first 6 months of passing.
But that was probably always true. Has that got worse in recent years? I mean, the most dangerous drivers have always been the most recently qualified.
Well, actually, some of the most dangerous drivers are the ones that have been driving for the longest.
No, but I mean
because
statistically,
they suddenly become very complacent.
No, I know, but I mean, this is in grave peril of turning into a motoring phone-in, and we certainly don't want that. But I'm talking about statistically. That I don't know whether the numbers you just shared about 17 to 24-year-olds are new, or whether they're part of an established trend. It's easy to find out. But your point there, from the seat, with the dual controls, from the driving instructor's seat in the car, spotting the changes that you attribute to video games. And I despite the fact that this is uncomfortable for me, because I've spent my whole life arguing that playing video games has no influence whatsoever on how you behave in the offline world, I'm beginning to think, I'm beginning to wonder, let us say. Rob's in Vendée in France. Rob, what made you pick up the phone?
Hello, James. Thanks for taking the call. I may have missed the point of the last, because I've missed the last few, so I hope I'm not repeating anything. But I used to work for the police in the north of England, working on the ANPR cameras.
Oh, yeah.
Which was a brilliant job. I really miss it. It was fantastic. And we often would have the guys from the Channel 5 programmes would come in and film us. They'd film us in the control room, and then they'd be out with the police on scene in the cars filming the same incident.
Yeah.
The point is, I don't want you or anybody else to miss the point, the major point of the thing. That's not comparable for me with the whole TikTok thing, because it's not glorifying the poor driving and the dangerous stuff. It's effectively highlighting where these people are, causing danger. And mostly they would end with the guys getting arrested.
So you watch these programs and you are rooting for the police officers?
Well, yeah, pretty well. I mean, I used to do the job. I was there with my colleagues, and I worked in North Yorkshire, which borders Cleveland, so I would know people who knew the officers who died at the weekend, and so I'm wrapped up in that a little bit. But on the main point is, it's not comparable to say that the programs like Channel 5, whatever it's police camera action, those things, traffic cops, they're not glorifying the baddies and the poor driving. They are actually highlighting the whole point, that it's incredibly dangerous and stupid.
The only thing I've got here, and it could be just me being stubborn, but the difficulty of answering the question about what you get out of watching these films or these programs or these clips. Hang on, just the base dopamine hit is the same. All that changes is who you're rooting for while you're watching it.
Well, it's happened. It's real life, and it's happening.
Yeah, I know, but this is the thing. This isn't a hill I want to die on. But I'm trying to get inside the head of people. 2.5 million people have watched some of these clips. Mm-hmm. What are they getting out of it? Answer: they're getting the same thing out of it that people who watch programs like the ones you're talking about watch. They're just rooting for a different team. They're just rooting for the other side.
Well, it's not exactly like a football match, because one side's rooting for people to get away with a lot of very bad things.
Which is disgusting, but it doesn't make me wrong.
Well, it kind of...
So who are they rooting for? What are they getting out of it?
Well, normally, it depends. I mean, a lot of baddies would probably watch it. Yeah, a lot of people on the criminal side would probably watch it to see how they could get away.
Not 2.5 million people, mate.
No, exactly. That's my point. That's my point. Is that most people who would be watching that would be supporting the forces of law and order and trying to, and seeing...
But the thrill they're getting, the distilled thrill they're getting is the same regardless of who they're supporting.
All right. James, have you actually seen the programmes?
I've seen police camera action a bit, yeah.
You have. I mean, most of them are not just pure pursuits with, let's take on the police.
The helicopters in the sky, you've got...
Yeah, they do that. They absolutely do that.
People hiding in hedges, and you're rooting for the police. Of course you are. But what is the dopamine hit that the people watching the criminals evade the police getting? If you distilled it down to chemicals, the chemicals would be the same.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's an entertainment value in it. Otherwise, they wouldn't put it on the TV. It was a bit. I mean, when I was there, they'd come in and film us there, and we always thought it was a little bit. Sometimes there was an element. They'd interview us as well, but I think mostly they were very balanced and they were very respectful.
And we're back to Ryman's then. We're back to James's point about if somebody sends poison pen letters, you don't blame Ryman's for it. I mean, it needs a little bit of work, I think, that position, but. You've got two completely different things that have a commonality. They have something in common. You shouldn't stress too much about the commonality. Focus upon the things that are right and the things that are wrong. 10:59 is the time. I'm going to say their names again with your permission because I think it's important, and it is. It's always sad to see names like PC Matthew Blades and PC Tom Clough fade away from the forefront of a story as we cover inevitably more arrests, charges brought, I think, in one case this morning, and of course then broader conversations about the entire phenomenon of these glamorising of dangerous driving. It's 11 o'clock.
James O'Brien on LBC.
4 minutes after 11 is the time, and turn our attention next to it's probably the biggest issue of our time in terms of issues that were not as big in other times. Some of the stuff that we talk about is timeless, right? Like education, I suppose, or even defence, or other issues that come around sort of box fresh that we've never really discussed before, although they're often variations on the same theme, aren't they? Moral panics might be about video games or TikTok videos, but we've had moral panics in the past about everything from Hollywood films to translating the Bible into English. We are fine-tuned as a species to be frightened and angered by things. It's the ability to control that fear and anger that can deliver some of the biggest prizes that our planet has to offer to unscrupulous people. But if I look at the conversations we've been having for the last 20 years or so, then an awareness of, an interest in, and an appreciation of the importance of mental health would be very near the top of the list. It's hard to believe that when we started doing it on this programme, from a particularly male perspective, it felt revolutionary. It felt revolutionary. We did it initially, I think, organically, as everything on this programme begins. It just sort of came out of a story. We opened up the phone lines and we got taken aback by the response. And then it segued for a while, and going back a long time now, into military personnel, ex-military people struggling with their mental health, which was like a kind of an unopened chapter of the entire story. It's still not the case that these men and women receive the support that they both need and deserve, but compared to what that was like when we started the conversation, when we started talking about it, I'm not for a minute claiming the credit for starting the conversation. Charities that I subsequently got involved with were working in that space. Most obviously, in my case, a charity called Combat Stress, but they were often, it felt, shouting into the void about the help that was needed. That has got a lot better. And then after that, you move into the realms of general mental health issues. And then I got particularly interested in young people's mental health because of one single statistic that was shared with me by a concerned mother. And it was about the number of CAMS units, children and young adults mental health services, that couldn't even find time for an appointment with you unless your child or unless you had reached the very end of your tether. It was an unbelievable statistic that I couldn't quite accept until I checked for myself. So it's a good thing, right, that we now talk about mental health a lot more. It's possible that we can talk about it too much. You're aware of an increasing tendency to criticise and insult young people when they talk a little bit glibly, perhaps, or a little bit too fluently for some of us oldies about their mental health. I kind of did it myself at the top of the show this morning when I talked about sometimes perhaps not wanting to dive into a topic as enthusiastically as I could because I'm worried about the impact it might have on my mental health. I mean, it is just a desire not to be sad, a desire not to be low level, not medically depressed. Do you see what I mean? So that conversation, if we'd had it yesterday about the 2 police officers killed in Cleveland, that it just felt so raw, I suppose, is the word that I'd use. But that's normal. We've always done that. We just use different language now to describe it. There are 3 stories in the news today about mental health, and I want to share all of them with you. And quite funny, really, to reflect that one of them comes from the showbiz pages. One of them comes from, albeit via Men's Health magazine, one of them comes from a polling. It's a statistics story that looks at polling conducted by Mind, the mental health charity. And one of them essentially looks at prescriptions and tries to turn it into a front page story. No prizes for guessing which newspaper looks at prescriptions and then turns it into a front page story. And remember, front page stories are designed to either make you frightened or angry. So what you are supposed to be frightened or angry about in response to news that there is a record number of people on antidepressants, I'm not entirely sure, except to acknowledge that growing sense that we're being encouraged to be a bit sceptical now, a little bit cynical, especially if you're young. In my day, we just pull our socks up and also cancel your Netflix subscription and stop eating avocados. And so, you know what I mean, that temptation to look down on people because we didn't have names for this condition when I was your age, or we didn't have room for this kind of self-care when I was your age. It's growing all the time. You know it is. Here are the 3 stories. Story number 1, record 1 in 7 on antidepressants as pill use rockets. 1 in 7 people in England were prescribed antidepressants last year. And the Daily Mail describes these figures as worrying, which is, I don't know, probably fair enough. The star of Ted Lasso, Brett Goldstein, who is an incredible force for good in the world, has given an interview to Men's Health magazine in which he talks about being depressed and talks about how a gratitude journal changed him. In other words, he felt there was nothing good going on in the world, and a therapist encouraged him to write a journal listing at least 10 things he was grateful for. And as he said, in the beginning, there was nothing. You're so depressed, you've got like nothing to write down, but you have to fill in 10 different things. So you start with, and you had to do it every day. So you start with, the sun is up. That's 1. And by day 30, he says, you've started training your brain to look for the positive. There's definitely some truth in that. And then story number 3, mental health professionals are struggling to give patients the standard of care they need amid staffing issues and, of course, with more people presenting with complex problems. So, in many ways, they all speak to the same thing, which is an uptick in our acknowledgement of and understanding of mental health. But they also speak to the same thing in terms of the inadequacy of resources to deal with it. So some of the people that have been prescribed antidepressants in the Daily Mail story might actually have benefited from the kind of therapy that Brett Goldstein is talking about in his Men's Health interview. And had they received that kind of therapy, which is expensive and hard to access sometimes, or indeed just simply hard to access because it is expensive, then they might not have needed the prescription. Or the GP that has given the prescription might have preferred to send them for a talking cure, might have preferred to send them for psychotherapy, but doesn't have the resources or the wherewithal or the funding to do so. So a little packet of pills is the only option open to the GP in that kind of scenario. And then you've got the 3rd story about mental health professionals not being able to give patients the standard of care that they need because of staffing issues and a big increase in the number of people presenting, prompting one mental health nurse to describe or to tell Mind, the mental health charity, it often feels like firefighting. I get so upset that I do not have the resources available to provide the care, support and treatment that is needed. It's the same story, isn't it? 3 different headlines, 3 different sources, 3 different newspapers. It's exactly the same story. It's a story about more and more people feeling and seeking help with their mental health. It's a story about a system that is not able to provide it on anything like the scale that the mental health professionals would like to. And it's a story about the sort of help that they might get, that you might get, that we might get in alternative to medication, albeit that
often medication is the only and best response to some mental health problems. Depression in particular is what we're talking about today. That's what Brett Goldstein is talking about, and that's what most of the mental health professionals struggling to give patients and standard of care that they need will be dealing with. It's about the other things that you might get or you might do in the absence of medication. It's the same story. And it is, I would argue, particularly with these figures that are presented today on the front page of the Daily Mail in red. I mean, if you think I exaggerate when they say you're supposed to be angry or frightened of something, why the hell would you put the numbers in red? In bright red. Record 1 in 7. It's literally an alarm. Well, it's the colour of alarm. It's the colour of shock. 1 in 7 in red. So you are not being encouraged to go, oh, blimey, that's awful. How can we make things better for these people? You're being encouraged to do something different from that. I don't know what, because it's not working on me, but am I being encouraged to not believe them, to call them malingering liars, to start talking about robustness and resilience? I don't know, but it's in red, so I'm supposed to be angry. Literally, I'm the bull, that's the rag, that's the red rag. But we're not going to do that, obviously. What we're going to do is this. We're going to have 2 conversations this hour. One of which we've had before, but I think it's important to have it again every now and then, once or twice a year. It usually works out at. And the second bit of it is an invitation to you to be a bit like Brett Goldstein this morning. Because, this has been lifted from a long interview in Men's Health magazine, and it has been condensed into 3 paragraphs, and it could, if you were so minded, be presented in a way that left him open to mockery or criticism. But we're not going to do that either. We're going to recognise that good therapy, in this case, really works. And the good therapy that he received, and the one example of it that is picked up on in this précis of his interview, was a gratitude journal. You're sitting there feeling that the world is a place that you can no longer cope with, and someone suggests you write a gratitude journal, you could be forgiven for laughing in their face. But that would be a mistake, because it works for some people in some cases and in some contexts. And this, of course, is across all the ages. This is not about young people, middle-aged people or old people. The 1 in 7 people in England being prescribed antidepressants last year will come from every single demographic and every single age group and every single corner of the country, although there is a regional divide, with antidepressant use highest in North Cumbria and South Yorkshire. In affluent London, the rate is often half. But in affluent London, in the affluent parts of London, a lot of people will be getting therapy. They will not be going for the prescription option first and only. The only path that's open to you is the doctor giving you some pills. People don't want to do that first for understandable reasons. So there are 2 questions that I've got for you. The second of which I've never asked you before, and I want to ask you today, actually. It's what worked for you. But before we get to that, question number 1 is, for people accepting the Daily Mail's invitation to be sceptical or cynical or angry about this story, and seriously, no one can argue that you don't stick a statistic in bright red unless you're encouraging people to be angry, right? We can all begin with a little bit of agreement about that. For people tempted to accept that invitation to be angry about other people's illness, what is the difference between being depressed in a medical sense, going to the doctor with depression? That is the question that I have for you. Essentially, I want you to tell, why did you go to the doctor with depression? Or what was going on in your life? What state were you in when the doctor told you that you were depressed? Okay? Because what I want to do, if I can, is pinpoint the difference, define the difference between depression on a medical level and depression in the way that we ordinarily all use the word. So Kidderminster Harriers, 1-0 up, Aldershot down to 9 men on Saturday afternoon. I'm there in the crowd, rooting for them, and somehow they equalised despite only having 9 men against our 11, and I therefore would describe myself as depressed. How are you feeling? I'm pretty depressed, actually. We conceded an equaliser to 9 men with 10 minutes to go. But I'm not depressed.
Not a criticism, by the way, of anyone who uses the word in that context, because we literally all do. I do. But I want to get that difference nailed down today for the benefit of people who don't know what it's like and who might be susceptible to the Daily Mail's propaganda, and not just the Daily Mail, of course. There'd be people who do what I do for a living who would lift that story straight from the front page of the Daily Mail and turn it into another invitation, a radio invitation or a television invitation to get angry with the poorly people. Because we've got to take a day off from the small boat. We've got to take a day off from the foreign people. So let's get angry with the poorly people today. And yeah, all right, you know someone who's swinging the lead, but that's not what this story is about. This story is about people who are telling the truth. And you could be one of them. What is the difference between being depressed about this, that or the other and having a medical condition? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Because I tell you, honestly, absolutely hand on heart, 10 years ago I'd have laughed at Brett Goldstein for talking about a gratitude journal. It's not something I've ever done. I've had some fantastic therapy, but I've not done that. I haven't needed to do that because I've never actually been depressed. But I'd have laughed at that. I'd have said, oh, come off it. A gratitude journal, whatever. I was that person. So I have some sympathy for the ease with which you can succumb to the Daily Mail's invitation to be angry and ignorant about other people's problems. So today, I get it. I had to read it twice. I had to think, really, a gratitude journal? And then he explains. You've got to write down 10 things to be happy about every single day, and it recalibrates you. It re-engineers your personality, or it re-engineers your mood to wake up in the morning and think about things that make you happy. What do you do if you've got a sad child or a sad parent or a sad partner? You try and remind them of the things that make them happy, and it doesn't really work because they're sad. But if you can somehow help them into a place where they're doing it for themselves and they're finding the things that make themselves happy, I don't know, a sunset, a bird singing in a tree, whatever it may be, if you can actually somehow re-engineer your own brain chemistry to go down that road, then you're going to get better. Things are going to be better. And of course, if you can't afford that, or you can't access that, or you haven't got that in your life, and you do go to the doctor, then the doctor is left with little choice but to give you some pills. And for many, many people, the pills are the right option and they work. So that could be your answer to my second question. In fact, it needs to be, for some of the people ringing in, needs to be the correct answer. But what worked for you? So what is the difference between depression in a medical sense and depression in the way that the rest of us use the word? 0345 6060 973. And what worked? What worked? So you have to know that you were in a darker place than most, right? You weren't just annoyed about the football or, hacked off about the fifth episode of Reacher not having dropped yet, despite the fact that you sat down last night with your dinner and were really looking forward to watching it. Those kind of things. So you know that you were in a much darker place than normal. And what helped get you out of it? If it was pills, 0345 6060 973. It's important to hear your voice this morning. If it wasn't pills, 0345 6060 973. You probably noticed. It's the same number.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 23 minutes after 11. On a lighter note than the conversation we're going to have next, Sarah throws us back into the last hour of the programme, and she says, I've always been baffled that there was any audience for these programmes, talking about the sort of police chase programmes on the television. She says, you have enlightened me, James. Now do Storage Wars. That's a great... I quite like those shows. And people break open storage units and then sort of fight over what's inside them and sometimes turn up some extraordinary stuff. I don't know. I don't know what the appeal of that is, Sarah, I'm afraid. But I'm glad that I've met half of your challenge this morning, and you now have a full understanding of why people watch those kind of programmes. 23 after 11 is the time. We're talking about mental health, the huge surge in the number of people being diagnosed with it and largely just being prescribed antidepressants. We're wondering what else works. And we're also wondering what it is in the context of the rest of us using that word to describe disappointment or sadness, but depression being something clinically different.
Simon's in Frimley. Simon, what made you pick up the phone?
Hey, James, my second call to you, so thanks. I didn't expect to be ringing you back so quick, actually, from last week or so. But I'm very passionate about this subject because I've suffered from depression all my life. That has never stopped me working or, functioning. But I've stood on bridges, next to rivers, had packets of pills, blah, blah, blah. So I've had it bad. One of the things that I don't like about the discussion of depression, actually, is fundamentally calling it a mental illness. And I think your distinction of is it pills, is it therapy, hides the fact that a lot of people, just from the fact it's described as mental illness, forget that it is a physical illness. So,
as in chemicals in your brain.
Chemicals in your brain. So the pattern you will see is long-term stress, trauma, anxiety problems, traumatic events can trigger the chemical changes. And then you start to get, that causes the effects of depression. Tablets are designed to put the physical conditions back into a normal enough state that you can then process and deal with the mental aspects of what is causing the underlying depression. So actually, just taking tablets does help, but it doesn't necessarily solve the underlying issue that sent you there in the first place, and that's where the therapy comes in.
So you make important points. I suppose part of the problem is that I don't think you can diagnose depression with a blood test, can you?
No.
Yet.
No, but it's for those with severe depression, and I think this is probably sits under why it was the largest killer of men under 45 years of age, is that the people who have it probably know very well that they are suffering something way beyond the, depression from all the shot losing.
All the shot Drew, actually, not to split hairs, but I wonder about that. I'm not challenging what you're saying because you're obviously speaking from experience. But if you've only ever known that, then are you actually going to need a little bit of help in recognising that you don't have to feel that way?
You do, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I've been suffering, looking backwards, and hindsight's a powerful thing. I've been on and off serious depression since I was 16.
Right.
And it wasn't until later in my life, probably into my late 40s, that I actually realised I had been suffering many sequences of depression throughout my life, untreated, led to some fairly poor outcomes for me at times. But there's a lot more information out there today in terms of online, even social media, some excellent social media groups that allow people to come on and anonymously talk about how they feel and identify it. And a lot of people with experience will say, you need to go and get help. You need to go and see your GP, which is your first port of call. Try and get some tablets because it won't fix your problem, but it will fix your thing. So I use an analogy quite often, which is if you go and break your leg and your bone's snapped, you can't do physiotherapy until you've been in a cast and your bone is healed. Then you can go and do the physiotherapy afterwards, and that's the same with. That's a beautiful.
It's a perfect analogy. What I mean, you don't have to do this, but if there were someone listening to this who is, like Pavlov's dog responding to the bright red numbers in the headline on the front page of the Daily Mail this morning and feeling angry or suspicious or fearful and cynical and sceptical and dismissive, taking a day off from the foreigners, instead focusing on the poor people claiming to be poorly. How do you describe to them that what you experience is not what they experience when they're feeling a bit blue?
That's hard. So for me, it was persistent mental pain of the type. Imagine the thing that you love the most, whether it be your partner, your child, your pet dog, and the grief that you felt, that overwhelming pain and sadness you felt from that loss, and then take that and experience it every day of your life for month after month after month until you can't deal with that pain anymore and there's no solution, and so the only way out is to end it. That is the level of pain that people live with.
So an unbearable bleakness,
an unbearable grief that you cannot take out of your head, you cannot shake off, that never gets better. No amount of talking to your relatives when, as you say, what would you say to somebody who's never experienced it? It'd be like any massive pain. If you've never experienced a physical pain, that you've never broken your leg. Imagine breaking your leg every single day of your life while you've got depression and that pain. How would you describe that to somebody? And someone says, yeah, I get a bit stiff in the morning, I've sat down wrong, I get a pain in the leg.
I remember when I started in this job, and I did it with my tongue in my cheek, but when women would talk about childbirth, and I'd say, well, I had a toothache once, it can't be that bad. It was a really bad, but I was being an idiot. Because plenty of people in the scenarios that you describe think that they're actually contributing something valid to the conversation. Is the second bit of my phone in wrong then, when I say what worked for you? Is that... It's not, is it? Because there are ways out of this, and your answer would be pills were part and still are part of it, but other things as well.
Yeah, it's more complicated than that.
Of course it is.
If you could, even on the pills, if you, and I'm a member of various, very large numbers of groups, of people on groups within things like Facebook where it is genuinely useful. And what you'll see is a lot of people discussing, I've tried this pill and it did nothing for me. Every pill is different. You can't there is no depression pill that you can go on. There's dozens of them, and some will work for some people. It took me 5 before I
get the one that
right
actually
pill.
did. So you need a good doctor
You need a good doctor. You need to be patient. You need that support, and that did work. And I still take the pills. One of the problems people have is they feel better after 6 months on the pills, so they come off them. Because you can't tell whether you're getting better because your underlying mental state is fixed, your physical state is fixed, or that the pills are keeping you afloat. And until you come off them, and that's the dangerous bit, then that's when depression can come back with a vengeance. So you need ongoing support. These aren't pills that solve or fix a disease. You can be on them for many years, if not life.
And there shouldn't be any shame or stigma attached to that any more than there would be somebody with a bad leg using a crutch.
Exactly. Daily Mail saying there's so many people with broken arms.
Yeah.
Where to me it makes me angry.
Worrying.
Because it is a physical illness.
It's a worrying figure, mate. 1 in 7 people have got a broken leg. It's a very worrying figure. But and I hope this isn't an inappropriate question. What do you also really value apart from medicine? What do you think does actually? And I appreciate that sometimes the tunnel is so dark that you can't ever imagine getting out of it. But things that, because I don't think that Brett Goldstein's comments about gratitude journals are unhelpful in the broader conversation, and everybody's different. Just as some medicine works on some people and doesn't work on others, some of these medicines can make things worse for people until they find the one that makes things better. That's often missing from the conversation. But do you have something that does make a big difference to you as well?
Well, a number of things. First of all, understanding depression and losing the shame over it means I can keep an eye on myself, and my wife does as well. So she knows from my face, if I'm starting to go downhill, and then I'll take proactive action to go back on my pills and keep going. In terms of therapy, therapy has worked to some extent, and I've tried a number of things. But again, it often comes down to not the therapy, but the therapist. So you have to separate the person that you're talking to, regardless of that. And there's, a list as long as your arm of depression therapy is all different. But actually, if you hit it off and you gel with the therapist, then I think many techniques will work. But the best thing actually is a lot of people, we talk about neurodivergence on the program a lot, and masking. That's the biggest issue for depression, is the shame at work. And also the fact, like the Daily Mail, that so many people just cannot comprehend what you're going through because it's a hidden illness and what you feel like. And so one masks. And the best therapy I found is actually finding other people who are depressed and going through it in different stages and talking. And there are a lot of charities now, the men especially, and obviously there are women's one, but my experience is the men's one, where you can get together, go and have a coffee, stay in chat groups and things with other blokes who are feeling depression, And actually talking to somebody who's going through it, who genuinely understands as well, goes a hell of a long way to actually making you feel better, making you feel heard, stopping you feeling alone as you go through that process. And that would be my recommendation to anybody, is do not try and tackle this alone, and do not expect, if you're young, your parents to understand, the stiff upper lip, just pull your socks up. All of that causes people to mask and hide the depression. And then you end up in that situation where, well, I thought he was fine, and next day the police are at your door going, we found him in the woods. And we had no idea. And that's because of the masking.
Yeah, of course it is. The brave face, the stiff upper lip, and of course a society that until very, very recently didn't acknowledge the danger that kind of mindset can do. You're a star, Simon. Thank you so much. You would have helped an awful lot of people simply by speaking so clearly and so dispassionately about your own experiences and your own life. It falls to me, of course, to remind everybody listening that we are not, neither Simon nor I, are medical professionals, and that if it is advice that you think that you need, then you should seek that from medical professionals. I also, at this point in the conversation, routinely remind you that one of the places you can go, but by no means the only one, is the Samaritans, who are available 24/7. And they're on 116 123 if any of the issues that Simon just discussed and touched upon are particularly relevant to you at the moment, and that is one of the places you can go. But that line there, just talking to people who know what it's like. He says it out loud. It's blooming obvious, isn't it? But sometimes you need to hear people say something out loud to realise how obvious it is. Here's Dominic Ellis with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 11:38. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where the someone's got to do it, haven't they? The Daily Mail is encouraging you to be either angry or suspicious or both about the record number of people being prescribed antidepressants. Normal people would respond by wondering what it is about the world that we inhabit that is prompting these diagnoses. And number two, what else perhaps could be done about it if pills really aren't the answer, although for many, many people they will be, with Simon's very, very important explanation a moment ago that there is no one pill. Some of the stories I've heard about people being prescribed one type of antidepressant, having a terrible response to it, and as Simon said, for him it was 3, 4, 5 goes later that they actually found the medication that was correct. And that is largely what psychiatrists do. Most people will never see a psychiatrist. They're lucky if they see a psychotherapist, but it will be the GP that makes these prescriptions. But if you get to see a psychiatrist, then the experimenting really with medicinal combinations until you actually see the reaction in the patient that you're hoping for is a huge part of what they do. 11:40 is the time. And of course, with that little knowledge that there are really any alternatives to proper treatment, but I do like the idea of things you were surprised made a difference to you, okay, including and in addition to medication. Ellen is in Nottingham. Ellen, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, James. That's taking my call. Sorry if I sound a bit hoarse. I'm a little unwell at the moment.
I don't know what you sound like the rest of the time, so we're fine.
I just called in because I've got what I think is maybe a slightly unique perspective, as I'm a mental health professional, but I've also had my own problems with mental health in the past. I just want to briefly, gently challenge what you said about psychiatrists experimenting with medication, though, before I go on to my main point, in that we like to think we have a fairly good diagnostic process. We try and understand what's going on with people, and we know that different medications are good for different things. So although it might take a bit of kind of figuring out what the best option is for someone, we always know like a narrow range of where to start.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I didn't mean to suggest otherwise, but if you thought that I was doing, then your clarification is doubly welcome.
Sure, thank you. So speaking personally, what's helped for me is I've been very fortunate to access long-term private therapy, which has helped me hugely over the years. I've had mental health problems on and off since my late teens, and initially what helped me was NHS provision, so medication, short-term therapy, and that fixed me up pretty well for a while, and I was very lucky in that case because a lot of people that doesn't work. And as time's gone on, what I found most helpful is long-term therapy that keeps me well rather than trying to treat things as and when I get worse.
Okay, so yeah, that's like a sort of tending to you, to your needs, to your care, rather than responding to crisis moments.
Yes, but most people don't have access to that because it's
don't.
Expensive. The NHS only provides very short access to therapy. And in my work as a mental health professional, what I see all the time is that people need help that is not available, whether that be social support, better housing, proper childcare, employment support. It's just not there. And a lot of the time what we're left with is stuff that we know might help people a little bit, but isn't going to fix them.
And that is going to be part of the prescribing process, isn't it? There are going to be people being prescribed antidepressants in good faith by good medical professionals who wish they could do something more or something else.
Exactly, yeah. And it's a source of huge stress for us as professionals because we want to help the person in front of us the absolute best we can, but often what's within our control is a really limited amount, which is usually short courses of therapy, long waiting lists for longer therapy, or medication. And we only prescribe medication if we know it's going to help somebody, but there's a difference between helping somebody and fixing somebody.
That is an important sentence that you just said, that we only prescribe medication if we know it's going to help somebody, because the reason why you put these numbers in red ink on the front page of a newspaper today is to create the idea in the minds of your readers that they don't need it, it's not going to help them, when in fact what they need is more. This is the sticking plaster rather than the cure.
Precisely, and a lot of the time, I mean, I personally have seen many people who are having really understandable human reactions to horrible life circumstances. Yeah. They've been through something awful. They're stuck in situations that keep them miserable, that anyone would be miserable in, but we can't fix any of that. But we know that maybe an antidepressant will give them more energy, more motivation.
Gosh, yeah, just take the edge off, almost like their logical responses to a hideous situation.
Absolutely, and that's by no means the majority of what I see, but it's definitely, it's a pattern that can't be denied. And I don't think those prescriptions are inappropriate because we're still helping somebody.
Of course, but they are not the end of that person's journey.
It's not the root cause.
I'll ask you what I asked Simon, and I know it's a tricky one, but for somebody listening to this in good faith, who just doesn't really know what depression means, and they think that do you know what I mean? The difference between a condition that would prompt somebody to end up in front of you and a condition that might prompt somebody else to think, well, I've been depressed and I didn't go to the doctors. What is the distinction? And you can speak either as the patient here or the doctor, I don't mind which, or perhaps a bit of both.
It's always going to be a bit of both, isn't it? But,
always, yes.
I mean, from a medical perspective, we've got diagnostic criteria that say what makes you depressed, and for me, I would always be more concerned if somebody's persistently low, where those good moods are fleeting, they're not happening as often. For me, crucially, a lot of the time, it's loss of interest in things. You have a hobby that you enjoy, but you can't bring yourself to pick it up. It's not giving you that enjoyment it used to. If you're noticing that you're withdrawing from your relationships, from people, that's a sign that something's wrong beyond just, I'm a bit stressed, or I've had a bad day, or, I've had an argument with my partner. But most crucially, my message to anybody is if you're having any thoughts about harming yourself or anyone else, please speak to somebody, because that's not something you should deal with alone, ever.
And that, I mean, in the first instance, it'll be your GP, really.
Yes, yeah, it will be.
What I've asked everybody this, so I'll ask you as well. And you've mentioned therapy and CBT. I think is one of the things that you've done, and you've reminded us, which is so important, that there's such luck involved in that. Luck of being able to afford it, luck of being able to access a simpatico professional. I mean, luck of knowing where to go to ask for help. Is there anything small that you do in your life that makes a difference?
I've, over the years, integrated lots of little things that I know keep me well, and that's just through trial and error. So for me, sleep is a really big part of it, making sure that I'm sticking to a good sleep schedule. For me, making sure I have one day a week where it's just for me. I don't plan things with anybody else. I don't have any responsibilities, as much as I can avoid it, which, again, I'm very privileged to be able to do because I don't have any dependents. And for me, routine is really helpful. As well, but again, it differs for everybody.
You make it sound so logical, and yet, of course, when we stick a new phrase on something, some of us bridle a bit, say self-care. Oh, we didn't talk about self-care when I was young. It's such an obvious thing to do, self-care. Just care for yourself and recognise the things that help and just try to do them more. And some of them will be a lot easier to do than others, so start with them. Thank you, Ellen. That was really lovely, really helpful. It's 11:46. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I started doing yoga about 6 months ago, something that I used to laugh at. I remember my mum did. My mum was one of those people who did everything in the 70s and the 80s, tap dancing, yoga, Weight Watchers. I remember one summer all she ate was melons. I presume that was some sort of weird diet. Me and my sister got all the seeds. Did you do that? You wash all the seeds from all the melons and used to make necklaces out of them. Mum did yoga for about a fortnight. I thought it was ridiculous. I have a story about doing Tai Chi that I have mentioned to you a few times over the last couple of years, and I've never told you the story because it's too embarrassing. I'm going to tell it to you one day. I don't know. Maybe it's going to be today.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 10 to 12. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where the conversation is so important. And yet, I'd like to think, I don't often do this, but I like to think sometimes we show that you can do these things differently. Oh, look, the front page of the Daily Mail, loads of people are taking antidepressants. Let's have a conversation about the ones who don't really need them. Let's not. Let's have a conversation about the ones who really do, because it's probably all of them. And if it isn't, then what other areas of your life do you take 100 people doing something and focus on the 2 that don't need to be doing it instead of the 98 that do? You just don't do that. You think I exaggerate? Why have they put 1 in 7 in red ink? It's disgusting. It's, let's take a day off from attacking foreigners and let's attack people who've got depression instead. This is what passes for journalism in this country today. And maybe it was always like that. It's only as I get older that it becomes even clearer. But, of course, if you choose to have the conversation in the way that we're having it, you get to listen to people like Simon and Ellen, and you get to learn, and you get to empathise, and you get to understand things. And if you need help, you get to recognise what that help might look like and what would happen if you didn't seek it, perhaps. 11:52 is the time. I'm not doing the Tai Chi story in this hour because it's too serious, the subject matter. I might do it in the next hour. It's been a long time coming, and if I don't do it soon, I'll probably forget what happened. Chris is in Edinburgh. Chris, what would you like to say?
Morning, James.
Hello,
First
Chris.
time, long time. Nice to chat with you.
Yes, it's gone into a catchphrase now, has it? First time, long time? Nice to chat. It's only me. You're not nervous. Carry on.
Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous, so thanks for bringing that up as well.
All right.
You were asking about the difference between depression in the medical sense and the everyday sense,
yes.
And I wanted to come on because I think I can talk a little bit more to what that difference actually feels like. So for me, it was that I would wake up every day already feeling this horrible weight. It was like this thing that I felt right at the very core of my person, and it was before anything happened that day. It was before I'd got out of bed. It wasn't that I was in a terrible mood. It was just something that I carried around with me throughout that whole day.
What are we describing? Is it a fear? Where would that feeling have come from normally in other areas or other contexts?
It's kind of what I've come to recognise maybe is more similar to your fight and flight response.
Yeah, okay,
I
got
wouldn't
it.
say it was necessarily fear, not something you can actually physically point to.
No, I understand. But it is that you're poised, on edge, hypervigilant, constant, expecting.
Yeah, I was waiting for the next terrible thing to happen from the very second that I woke up.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. I think your everyday sadness has a cause, and that's something that you can point to, and it's something that will lift. And this is something that never lifted. I would.
You say, why am I feeling like this? And you'd say, I've got absolutely no idea, but I am.
Yeah, nothing I could point to, and I'd go to bed every night hoping that tomorrow's going to be a normal day, and I'd wake up the next day upset because it wasn't a normal day, and that feeling was still there, and I'd kind of repeat that on a cycle.
Got it.
Yeah, and I would, over time, you're lying awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about every bad thing you've ever done. You convince yourself you're not worthy of love, that your friends don't care about you, that you deserve to be on your own. And that goes on long enough that I think eventually, the thoughts start to get worse and worse.
And what stopped the cycle for you?
Well, for me, the first thing I did was I turned to the NHS. I made an appointment with my GP to talk about it. I was living in London at the time, and not to deter people from seeking help, but I didn't have a positive conversation with that GP. I told him that I had all these feelings and thoughts, and he kind of, first thing he said to me was that, that's just what life is like inside the M25. And he prescribed me with antidepressants, and off I went.
Right.
But, I kept at it, and I think that's a core thing that we want to get across to people, that need help and support, you have to continue to advocate for yourself, even if it doesn't feel like it, even if it feels impossible. Eventually,
it's so hard to do. It's chicken and egg, isn't it? Because you're going to be in a much better position to advocate for yourself if you're feeling chipper than you are if you're feeling broken. But you're so right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Or someone on doing it on your behalf. Or if you're a child, the parents' advocacy is going to be the difference between getting better and not getting better. So I presume the medication helped. But as Ellen explained to us earlier, it will not have been the end of your search for solutions.
Absolutely, and listening to Ellen, it was a very similar experience. I think Simon mentioned it as well. You try multiple medications before you find something that does help. The hard thing, I think, with it is that there are a lot of side effects at first. You have to kind of wait them out, so you already feel terrible, and then you're taking this medication that's supposed to make you feel, or at least help you to feel better. In the short term, it makes you feel a little bit worse. But, you know, with a little bit of experimentation and trial and error, I did manage to find an antidepressant that took the edge off the worst of it. And it gave me the room to actually start doing the work of getting myself better.
Because you knew it didn't have to be like this. That seems to me to be a distinction. Is that you knew somehow that it didn't have to be like this, and yet other people in your situation get tempted towards the conclusion that this is how it will always be.
I think for me, I managed to get myself into a headspace, luckily, that I could treat it like work. I would wake up and I would think, you know, let's get to work on feeling better today, finding the ways to a little bit of breathing room. Changed a lot over getting access to talk therapy as well, which for me was the real game changer in the process.
And in your own words, what difference did that make for skeptics, for people like I would have been 10 years ago who thought, yeah, whatever, I don't need to talk about my problems? What difference does talk therapy make, and why?
You get to a point where you're kind of talking yourself out of your negative thoughts, because it's teaching you how to actually understand what is going on inside your own head. Most important thing, the biggest piece of ammunition you can have in a struggle with your mental health, particularly depression, is the ability to name something and to identify, is this a reasonable response to whatever's happened to me? Can I prove this negative thought? Can I give it, you know, something in real life that I can point to and say, oh, that is the case? So if you have that process, you can't, you know, actually point at something tangible. Speaking, it must be.
Yeah, and you're not going to get that on session one, and you're not going to be able to learn it to do it without your help, and without guidance. And we're back to privilege or luck or whatever it may be to be able to access this stuff, because it's A, not easy, and B, it's not cheap. And you know, if you're lucky enough to be able to access it through the NHS, then you're even luckier than everybody else in a way. Chris, you're a star. Thank you. You put that brilliantly. Just line going a tiny bit glitchy towards the end, so I'll leave one or two more questions on ice or for another time. And in a way, although the conversation hasn't, and I think quite correctly actually, hasn't really gone down the other route that we were talking about, which is the other things you could do. In a way, what Chris described there, retraining yourself, retraining your mind with the benefit of behavioural therapy. That is what you're doing. You are trying to understand and therefore change your behaviour. Does explain why the comments from Brett Goldstein caught my eye this morning, because he's not just decided one morning to do a gratitude journal. He's doing it as part of a much broader treatment, as part of much broader therapy. And that phrase that Chris just used there about training yourself to think differently is something with which a gratitude journal in the context of broader therapy would help, because it was a therapist that encouraged him to do that. Every day, 10 things you're grateful for, 10 things that you are grateful for. And that you can see, if you're in a good enough place to be susceptible to that kind of recalibration, then it is going to help. But an awful lot of people will need an awful lot of help getting to a place where that kind of recalibration is possible, and where a gratitude journal would help. Oof, it's 12 noon. I want to talk about foxes next. Really?
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 3 minutes after 12, and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Beavers and foxes. This hour, I can't see a phone in for the beavers. Can you? This is how much of an anorak I am, and also how much I love North Norfolk.
Eleanor said to me the other day, there's some wild beaver have been born in Norfolk, and I named the river and I named the country park in which they have been discovered. And I also explained to her that they're not part of the rewilding project, if that's the right word to use, which we have in Ealing, just up the river from me, up the River Brent. We have wild beavers that have been reintroduced into the wild, and they've started building dams, and I haven't seen them myself, but I know a man who has, and it's really exciting, and I don't know why. But that's not really a phone-in. Why is it? For a start, why are beavers exciting could play havoc with your algorithms, couldn't it? I certainly wouldn't want you to Google it. But I don't know why. Some people are left completely cold by it. I told you, didn't I? I've developed quite an annoying habit when I'm out for walks with people. If I'm with my wife, if I'm with Mrs. O'Brien, we both really like birds. We like spotting birds, and where we are near the river, we see quite a lot. So we'll see egrets, we'll see herons, we'll see cormorants. You very rarely get taken by surprise. You get some migrating birds, which you won't see the rest of the year. So you might see a mandarin duck, or what are they called, a tufted pochard, or something like a pochard or a tufted. And it's nice, and I like it. But sometimes I'm walking with people. If you go out with couple friends who are walking the dog or something like that down by the river, and it's not just that people, they're just supremely uninterested, and they're not boring people, and they obviously like the outdoors because they've come for a walk. We're on a dog walk together, and I'll go, look, there's a pochard over there, and there's one particular occasion where it happened. Someone I've known for years. I'd never even had a conversation with them about natural history, and I didn't used to be into it. I must be completely clear about that. It wasn't that they were bored. It was almost, what's the word that I'm looking for? It's like an absence of any reaction whatsoever. So even now, I see a heron pretty much every day. Sometimes I on a good stretch of the Thames, you might see 3 or 4 herons. I'm still excited by a heron. A heron in full flight is a wonderful thing. It's the closest you'll ever see, Keith, to seeing a dinosaur in real life. A heron in full flight is the closest you'll ever get. The shadow of a heron coming over you, it's like a pterodactyl. It's like some sort of lizard brain response. So I will be excited even though I see them every day. I don't know why. But on this occasion, I'm out with this friend and I say to her, look, over there's a heron. And she couldn't care less. It wasn't even that she was like, oh yeah, right. It was as if she couldn't understand why I was pointing it out to her. There you go. And not because she sees them all the time, but because it just didn't have any emotional impact on her wildlife in general. It's the kind of person you could take on safari and they'd spend the entire time wondering what was for lunch. It was extraordinary. And I can't criticise that because I spent the first hour of the programme talking about how I just don't have any form of emotional reaction to cars. And some people get more excited about cars than they do about anything else. And I don't judge you. A bit of me envies you. It's probably a little bit more manly, isn't it, to be excited about a car than it is about a heron? I don't know. So I don't know why beavers are exciting. And I don't know why I keep saying that. But anyway, it is down near a place called Pensthorpe, where they used to film Springwatch, actually, back in the day. They don't film it there anymore. Just near Fakenham, if you're familiar with that part of the world. Beavers were hunted to extinction in the early 16th century. There's a chance these ones have been illegally released, either by activists or, I don't know, maybe they're escaped pets. But wild beavers have been born in Norfolk for the first time in more than 500 years. 2 of them. They're called kits. Did you know that? Absolutely glorious story. Absolutely glorious. And I couldn't tell you why in a million years, and I haven't got a phone in. All right? Why are beavers exciting? I don't know. They build dams. So what? But it's just really interesting. Why do some of us respond to natural history? You talk to Chris Packham. I remember years ago, I have got a phone in somewhere, just bear with me for a while. I'm in one of those moods. I remember years ago, and this isn't immediately obvious why I'm talking about this, I had Patrick Moore on the show. I was quite wet behind the ears. I was quite new on the programme, and I was still doing that thing where I was trying to be provocative and, edgy. Challenging enough for you? And I said something to Patrick Moore along the lines of, but why do we still send craft into space? What's the point? Imagine what all the other things we could spend the money on. And he just sort of, I couldn't see his face because he was on the phone, but if I could have seen his face, I think what I would have seen on his face would have just been pity. How can you not be transported by thoughts of space and by the excitement of exploring it? We touched on this a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? When we tried to work out what was so exciting about the eclipse. Do you remember why some people thought it was the best thing since sliced bread? Other people weren't even going to step out onto their own patio to have a look at the sky. Why? And I think the answer is wonder. Wonder. Some people feel wonder when they think of space and they want to explore it. And Patrick Moore thought I was a wombat for not, in that moment, getting it. Some people feel wonder when they see a sparrow. Let alone, Chris Packham is who I was thinking of. It's Chris Packham that made me think of Patrick Moore, right? That's why, because some people communicate their... You know who I always think of at this point in these conversations? I've told you. I can't wait to see what you put up, because I always think of Fred Dibner. Do you know who Fred Dibner is, Keith? I always think of Fred Dibner when I think of these moments, because Fred Dibner was possessed of an ability to make his own enthusiasms universal. He could sort of almost prompt osmosis. You have never in your puff given the vaguest impression of being interested in steeples or big chimneys. But when Fred Dibner on your television started talking about steeples and big chimneys, it was the most interesting thing in history. Look him up, kids. Seriously, I don't need to. That's how my algorithm works. That's why I'm not really fully attuned to the dangers of these algorithms, because I, at the moment, am going through quite a big Fred Dibner phase. Fred Dibner has that ability. He can do with steeples what Chris Packham can do with natural history, what Patrick Moore could do with space, and what Brian Cox, of course, can do with science, with physics, with space as well. It's an extraordinary ability to communicate enthusiasm itself. So by talking about the thing that I find interesting, I make you interested. And it turns out I don't have this ability, because when I was pointing out various birds to my friend on this walk, she was gloriously ambivalent, not even particularly bored, just baffled as to why I was telling. You could almost see it on, why is he pointing at birds? She was utterly and completely indifferent. Look, there's a heron over there. Whispering, you think, might convey a little bit of excitement. It's a heron over there. It's nesting. It's a nesting heron. If we're lucky, we might see the baby herons. No, nothing. Not even. I mean, in a way, if she'd said, "I don't really like birds," I'd have found that better. It was the utter indifference stroke ambivalence that I took almost as a personal affront. How am I failing so completely to communicate to you why this is really interesting? Not why I find it interesting, but why you should. It turns out that when it comes to birds, I am no Fred Dibner. I am no Chris Packham. I am no Patrick Moore. And I don't have a phone in about beavers. Okay. Why? Why are beavers so exciting? We initially saw a single young one with a parent just pottering around doing little beaver things, said Richard Spowage, the manager of Pensthorpe. Doing little beaver things. How can you not? That's just the cutest thing in the news all year. And then in a later piece of footage, because they've got cameras set up, and suddenly it came running back and a second kit was running after it. 2 little beaver kits playing in the pond, playing in the pool. I know that nature reserve really, really well. I think I know where they are. They've built a lodge. It's called a lodge, Eleanor, not a dam. They've built a lodge, or maybe they're 2 different things. They have a lodge and a dam. See, we could do beaver-related content for the entire hour, Keith, but I haven't got a phone in. Why do some of us find it exciting and other people don't? You might as well have the same conversation about cars, the same conversation about steeples, the same conversation about space, the same conversation about storage wars. You need to have been listening to the whole programme for that last bit to work. But why do some of us find that wonderful and transporting and some of us don't? And the answer is wonder. Wonder. Which brings me to the foxes. And news in you heard it maybe with Tom earlier today, standing in for Nick on the breakfast show. These stories come around annually, I think. It's probably got something to do with the weather and something to do with the increased incidence of people feeding foxes. But a lady has claimed that a fox bit her baby on the head after sneaking into a home in the first known incident of its kind in more than a decade. Can we check that, please? I'm sure, I mean, I've been doing the job a long time now, but I'm sure I've done this phone-in before. I know she spoke to Tom Swarbrick earlier today, but is it really the first recorded incident in more than a decade? Haven't we? We've had stories about this before, haven't we? Has it been 10 years? My Lord above, are we really now doing this, phone-in on a 10-year cycle? 10 years since... So, this is not going to be the most sophisticated conversation that we've ever had together. But I am drawn to it for both personal and professional reasons. Because I have been on a journey with foxes. Foxes are the first big wild animals that most of us ever see, right? You see a fox, it's really exciting. You move to a city, you move to London, I hardly ever saw a fox. I grew up in the countryside. There were actual fox hunts near where I grew up. And I never saw a fox. I don't think I ever saw a fox in the wild as a kid. And I grew up on a farm. It was a pure rural. Fields to the left of me, fields to the right of me. Everywhere you look, there were fields. I never saw a fox. And then my first boarding school, was in a village where there was a hunt. So the hunt would meet. Farmers in particular were very fond of going fox hunting. So the farmers' sons that I was at school with, the people who didn't just live on farms but actually farmed farms, they always went fox hunting. It wasn't just the local toffs. In fact, around my neck of the woods, in that part of Worcestershire, there weren't that many proper toffs anyway. So the hunt would be a largely agricultural affair, but I never saw a fox. Saw the hunt, saw them in their coats and everything, hunting, never saw a fox. First time you move to London, first time you move to town, you see a fox, it's incredibly exciting, unless you're like my friend, who'd just be like, yeah, whatever, it's a fox, so what? And there's something quite magical about it. I saw a fox in Kew Gardens the other day. Absolutely beautiful thing. I mean, a truly beautiful thing. I imagine that fox is living a life of Riley, don't you? In Kew Gardens, so it's not going to have any fears, really. It's not eating out of bins. It's going to be living on an almost, undiluted diet of worms and healthy stuff, just strolling around these beautiful gardens all its life. Utterly fearless. I mean, utterly tame, really. I could probably have stroked the thing. I got so close. I'll put a picture on Blue Sky if you're good, because it was a beautiful fox. Often the urban foxes are really ratty and dirty, and they kind of mangy. But this fox was gorgeous. Bright red, white bib, absolutely beautiful thing. And I noticed in this moment, it was just last week, I was looking at the Henry Moores, highly recommended. I noticed in this moment that my attitude to foxes has completely changed again. So I used to love foxes. I used to think they were magical. I remember seeing 3 little foxes. When did it last snow? How many years ago was this? But in the last 10 years or so, 3 little fox cubs coming around the back of my big shed in the last house we lived in my old house, and frolicking in the snow. Now, if you can't feel anything when you see 3 little fox cubs frolicking in the snow, in the actual snow, it was a bit like these beavers in Norfolk. One of them came around the corner and I thought, oh, look, there's a lovely little fox cub. And then another one came, and then another one, and then they started frolicking. Keith, actual frolicking. They started playing with each other, knocking each other over, playing around. 3 little foxes. Then, of course, it turned out they were living under the big shed, and the story changed slightly. And then, and this is an important part of this story, they ate my chickens. So the 3 little fox cubs that I saw frolicking in the snow grew up, and some of them would have left the area, and some of them would have stayed. And 2 years later, they were no longer living under our shed at this point, but they were still in the area, and they ate my well, they didn't even eat my chickens. They killed my chickens for fun. And almost overnight, I started hating foxes. So I went from loving foxes to hating foxes. They burrowed into the chicken run. They bit the heads off both my chickens, and that was it. They just left the headless corpses in the middle of the chicken run. They didn't even eat them. If they'd eaten them, I would have sort of thought the circle of life, Hakuna Matata. Nature red in tooth and claw, but they bit the chickens' heads off and then just did one. They foxed off, Keith. And I hated them as a consequence of that. And then, last week, I felt this creeping back slightly. The foxes near me, there's a lot of them. The people we bought the house off used to feed the foxes. And next door to us, who were moving out at roughly the same time, so the two houses got vacated at roughly the same time, the people we bought the house off used to feed the foxes. And the people next door paid someone to round them up and take them away, which you can do. I don't know what you can do with them when you've rounded them up and taken them away. I think you maybe have to release them in the wild, or I didn't want to know, to be honest, even though I hated foxes at the time. I wouldn't derive any pleasure from a fox being killed, because a fox is a beautiful thing. So, that's the phone-in. So, when you see a story about a fox biting a baby, what's your first thought? Is your first thought for the fox or the baby? 0345 6060 973. There's never been a recorded case of a fox doing lasting and meaningful harm to a baby. Foxes are... I'm back. I'm back in Team Fox now. Someone tell Chris Packham. Because they are just incredible. They're beautiful. And they live in the cities. And they live wild. And you see them sleeping on a shed roof when you go past on the train, and it's like a little glimpse of the natural world that you wouldn't otherwise get. 20 minutes after 12 is the time. Tell me a story about a fox, all right? That's it. That is designed, or that will either... tell me a story about a fox that will swing my pendulum. That's all. And of course, all the pendulums, all the pendular of everybody listening. So tell me a story. That's it. That's the phone-in, all right? 0345 6060 973. Tell me a true story, a real-life story about a fox that will make the rest of us either go, oh, I love foxes, or I don't like foxes. That's what I want. And we can maybe find the king of the stories, the story that will absolutely close it down. All right, you've got me. I'm back off foxes again. I hate them all. Round them up. They're not vermin. You're not allowed to hurt foxes. They are... they're protected, as it were, but they're not classed as vermin. Local authorities have no legal obligation to act against them, but if they eat your chickens, you want them to. So tell me a story about a fox that will either swing my pendulum to fox love or swing my pendulum to fox hate. That's what I want. It's 21 minutes after 12. The phone lines are open. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. And if you can find a way to bring beavers into the conversation, then I'll give you the money myself.
James O'Brien on LBC.
After 12, and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. And it was a scratch, not a bite, I think the lady told Tom earlier. The newspapers have gone with fox intruder bites head of sleeping baby, but when Tom Swarbrick, in his full Watergate mood of journalistic inquiry, grilled this lady earlier, Carly Clarkson, it turned out that we think the punctures on the baby's head were probably caused by a claw or a paw as opposed to a bite. But the question remains, the most divisive animal. For them or against them, but it has to be based on a story. Thanks to Mike in Worcester for pointing out to me that the bite may have been an exaggeration. I like this message. James writes, Sasha, I think you are totally fascinating and great. How to get your message read out on the radio, lesson 101. But what on earth are you going on about? And can you tell the Tai Chi story, please? Thanks. I got there in the end, Sasha. You should have been a little bit more patient. We're having a conversation about a claim that foxes only interact with humans or only cause problems for humans every 10 years or so, which is a reason, I think, to love them. But I want the story that will swing everybody else's pendulum. The story about a fox that will make you love them more or hate them more, or change from loving to hating, or change from hating to loving. All right? And I'll take anything at all. Jamie's in Cambridge. Jamie, what have you got?
Yeah, hello there. It was a bit of a funny story that had both ways of the swing of the pendulum, really.
Blimey, go on then.
We sat there having Sunday lunch at our friends, door open, nice summer's afternoon. Next minute, I looked to my left thinking it was, just like something come in like a blown in, like a leaf or something on my arm. When I look down, there's a fox sitting at the chair leg looking at us whilst we're eating a bit of lamb, which was really, really funny. Next minute, there was a scream and a shout. The fox goes running out, but for the rest of the afternoon, we we shouldn't have done really, but we were feeding it the lamb all afternoon, which was brilliant, and it was so lovely to see in the garden.
How close did it come to you?
Well, it touched my arm.
No, I meant when you were feeding it, not when it was just sitting there.
At the back door. It was literally at the back door, and we were just feeding it at the back door. Now, we did put it out then, and we were feeding it at the back door. It was absolutely brilliant just to see. And it was almost like there was a thank you in its eyes to say it got some food that day.
Why did you say you shouldn't have fed it?
Look, encouraging, a bit like you were saying, encouraging it, bringing it to the back door. But then what was quite funny is...
But I don't know. You see, I'm on a journey, mate, honestly, because I swear, I'm not even exaggerating. The people that lived in our house fed the foxes. The people that lived next door paid someone to take them away. And I don't think they ever knew, the people we bought the house of, ever knew that the neighbours were paying people to take the foxes away. And whose side would you be on in that context?
Oh, I would be on the fox, 100%.
Feed the fox. Why not feed them then?
Yeah, I agree. I looked at it, and it almost looked in its eyes as if to say, thank you.
And it's lovely, right? It's a proper wild animal. It's like an extraordinary liminal space between feral and domesticated, and that's where the fox lives.
And for that to come into the actual dining room and sit beside me, thinking it was something else, but it was a fox, said it was incredibly hungry that day.
And have they seen it since? I mean, have you checked up with your friends?
Yeah,
Is it becoming quite a tame local fox?
Yeah, it's quite regular, and it doesn't cause any trouble. They just give it a few scraps, and it eats the scraps most days, and it's brilliant.
I like it. 26 minutes after 12. What is not to like? And that's a genuine question to which you can answer by dialing 0345 6060 973. What is not to like? Charlie, for example, says, if you've ever seen a fox... I mean, this is pretty grim, actually, but trigger warning if you're squeamish. If you've ever seen a fox kill a lamb as it's being born, you will never feed one again. Well, Charlie, mate, if you've ever seen a fox kill a lamb as it's being born, what the hell were you doing? You should have been getting rid of the fox, man. Seriously, standing there, you're probably filming it for TikTok, were you, you freak? I don't understand how you can find yourself in that kind of scenario without doing something to intervene. Perhaps I'm demonstrating the distance or the time that has passed since I was essentially a rural man into a urban man. Chris is in Hedge End in Southampton. Chris, what have you got?
Oh, hello, James. Long time listener, first time caller. I know you've heard that more than once.
I get you all in the end, Chris.
You do, yes.
Go on.
Yes, this late spring, early summer, we had fox cubs in the garden.
Yes, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
It was. We saw the first, just one, then two, then there were three, just basically frolicking and playing on the back lawn and what have you, and it was absolutely fantastic, and we enjoyed that for 1 or 2 weeks.
There's a butt coming, isn't there?
There always is, isn't there?
There's always a butt. Go on then.
But it was fantastic, but my wife and I, we enjoy our garden an awful lot. We take a lot of care of it.
Yeah.
Plus, my wife grows vegetables and
how bad's the drought? Have you got a hosepipe ban down there or not?
Well, oh God, yes, everything is just
carnage, isn't it? Absolute carnage. You've got to get out there with the cans.
Yeah, watering cans. Yeah, constantly. It's saving the water from washing up and using the grey water. So it's a right old workup. But yes, but the foxes, they were lovely. And my daughter is back with us at the moment, and she was absolutely over the moon with it all because it's fantastic. Nature close.
What's not to like? Here it comes.
But also, they were coming onto the patio really close. Then we started to notice the damage in the garden.
Well, digging for worms, really?
Yeah, basically, yeah. And we tried to net off the areas my wife had courgettes and what have you growing. Next thing you know, there's a fight with the foxes. They got tangled up in the netting, and it was quite yummy, actually, because they're all tangled up, of course, the damage they caused. Then we started we'd realised that the neighbours, next but one, were doing what your previous friends were doing.
They were feeding
them.
Right.
And they were coming in and they were bringing lumps of raw chicken, which then they weren't eating all of it, leaving it on the patio. Then the little brown friends came along.
The rats came along as well.
The rats.
Oh, this is like an episode of Springwatch, this, isn't it? On your patio. All you need is a badger, mate, and you've got the full set.
No, we've got squirrels and things like that, so they're lovely to see. And, of course, we're concerned about our neighbours. Other neighbours have got a very small cat. I thought, oh, dear.
Did you confront the feeders?
Yes, we did. Yeah, we're friendly with them. So
that's all right.
Dropped a little note to them and
said, please stop feeding the foxes. We've got rats now.
Yes, yeah, and they were very good, so we're going to stop it straight away. But anyway, we end up having to chase the fox cubs out of the garden because we first sat on the patio, they would come up to us, which is not fair on the fox. Lovely to see, but they should be frightened of us, shouldn't they?
I guess they should. In those moments, you sort of... Do you know what Chris Packham used to do? He told me on Full Disclosure.
Yeah.
He used to take a fox into his bed when he was a little boy. A wild fox. He'd keep it in his bedroom.
Crikey, he must have not a very good sense of smell.
That was my thought as well, but I presume you get used... I'm sure he told me that. I didn't imagine that, did I? I'm sure that came up on Full Disclosure. But because that's the thing. The reason I thought of that then was, are we sure that it's better if they're frightened of us? We're not predators. We're not going to eat them or kill them or hurt them.
But not everyone's going to be friendly towards them, are they?
No, I guess not. No, but I don't know that you can go around abusing foxes. But no, you're right. So you're either going to chase them off, or you're going to make them welcome. That's a lovely story there. That's basically the Odyssey there of garden wildlife. You've got it all. You've got the moment of magic, the falling in love, the beginning of the frost setting in, and then the rats turning up for the denouement. And then having to have a conversation with the neighbours and get them to stop feeding the foxes. So I remember I inherited this scenario. I wasn't in the house when the foxes were being fed, but when we actually turned our attention to the garden, which was an absolute, this is to continue Chris's horticultural theme, the garden hadn't been touched for years when we moved into the house that we're in now. And when we started doing it, we found bags of chicken bones, bags and bags and bags of chicken bones. And what was quite unnerving, if you're interested, Keith, what was quite unnerving is that the people that lived in the house before us had been doctors. And back in the 60s, our house had been the local doctor's surgery. So when we started digging up loads of bones in the garden, we got a little bit concerned, but it was quickly established that they were chicken bones, as opposed to former patients. It's 12:32. Here's Matt Hewitt with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Do you know what the other contender for this hour was? Sanctions against Iran. It's a toss-up sometimes. What are we going to talk about? Fox, friend or foe? Or sanctions against Iran. That's my world. That's my life. Welcome to it. And I went with Fox, friend or foe. It's a little bit more sophisticated than that, but I'm not going to lie to you, not very. I'm just looking for the stories that will change how the rest of us feel about particularly urban foxes. I don't think anyone's got beef with foxes in the countryside. Well, except fox hunters, I suppose, technically. But the whole premise of fox hunting is built upon the idea that foxes are a threat, right? I don't know whether it's true or not, but that's the historical rationale. Foxes are a threat to animals, to farm animals, to lambs, as Charlie pointed out, although he's subsequently been in touch to say he's never actually witnessed a fox eating a lamb as it was being born. But I'm sure it would be awful if I did. Well, I'm sure it would too, Charlie, but you'd be able to stop it from happening if you were actually there, wouldn't you? Foxes are quite easily scared. And, of course, the other element of this conversation is not as easily scared as they used to be because they're getting domesticated. Keith knows something I didn't know. Have I ever said that before, Keith? I think that's the first. So anyway, Keith read a thing. It's like that. It's two things today referencing the streets. It was from original Pirate Material, that line about geezers need excitement that came into our conversation about cars. But so that liner goes, I saw something on ITV the other night. Keith saw something on the BBC the other night, and foxes' snouts are getting shorter. Did you know this? Because they are becoming domesticated, as it were, as in they're not foraging as much for worms and grubs. Foxes eat a lot of worms. That's why they were turning Chris's garden upside down and playing havoc with his wife's courgettes. But they are becoming much more likely to feed on rubbish. So their jaw's getting stronger because they're biting into bins all the time. And their snout is getting shorter because they're not foraging in the earth for the worms as much as they used to. And historically, dogs and cats used to have longer snouts than they have now. Especially, I mean, you can still see it with dogs. Can't quite imagine a cat with a snout. But that's what Keith saw on the BBC the other night, so it must be true. And there it is. But why would you worry about it? Why would you have a problem with it? I don't know what the sort of historical reason is. But we may be about to find out. Michel is in Lot-et-Garonne in France. That's two calls from France today. What would you like? Is it Michel un homme or Michel une femme?
Une femme. Une femme, James. And James, a bit starstruck, actually, if I might say.
Why did you speak to Keith on the way through?
No.
You're very kind. Carry on.
Promises. I really want to speak to Keith.
Oh, no, you're not allowed to. No one's allowed to speak to Keith. Except on February the 29th, once every 4 years.
Okay, it's in my diary.
What made you pick up the phone, Michelle?
So we don't actually live here. We have a house here. We live in London. So urban story about foxes. And
London?
We have...
That was Keith, you see. You've woken him up now.
London.
Enough. Stop it. Carry on.
So anyway, we had 2 dogs. We had a French bulldog called Coco, and we had a schnauzer, a standard schnauzer called Tallulah. And they were really good partners in crime, actually. Where one went, the other would always go.
Yeah.
And anyway, down the back of our garden, we have a big garden for London, actually, James. Quite a long garden. And down the back, we have like a compost heap. And anyway, our French bulldog went... We had a lot of commotion at the back, a lot of barking, but that's not unusual because we've loads of foxes in the garden.
Right.
And the French bulldog went missing. And we were looking for some hours, actually. And eventually, really sadly, my husband and son found her bum sticking out the back of the compost heap. And essentially, when we got her out, she was dead. And what happened, we think, was there was a fox, probably, is it a vixen? It's a female fox, a vixen.
Protecting cubs.
Yeah, she was I think she might have been pregnant, and she'd nested in there, and there were 2 holes in it, actually. And probably what happened was Tallulah went into one, and probably Coco went into the other and cornered her. And I guess in self-defense, she bit Coco on the nose. And so Coco had these bite marks on her nose, and we think what happened, she was 8 years old, and she probably got really excited and had a heart attack or something.
Oh, my days.
And so she died, and it was so sad, really, really sad.
And does this influence your view of foxes in general? I presume it does.
You know what?
Go on, tell me. Because they killed my chickens. I hated them for years.
And we were really sad. There's actually a really sad ending to the story.
I'm sad enough already. Are we sure? We want the next chapter of this? Go on.
It was basically that night we went to bed and we were in shock. We went to the vets around 6 o'clock. It happened in the morning.
Yeah.
We took the dog to the vets. I mean, she was clearly dead, but we took her to the vets to
just in case.
No, that's not fair, James.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Anyway, we took her.
Didn't take her back to the pet shop.
Yeah, we demanded our money back, essentially.
This is an ex-dog.
A down payment. So anyway, we took her back, and we came home that night, and we probably left. We were in such shock. We probably left a key in the car. We don't know.
Right.
And the car was stolen off the drive. Would you believe it? The car was stolen off the drive. So it was a really sad story.
I presume this was a while ago, because
Oh, yeah. We now have another French bulldog. It was I think it was probably about 3 years ago.
Oh, that recently? You've recovered very quickly. I'm glad.
Yeah.
And what do you do now? So, I mean,
we're fine. No, we're fine.
But you don't, have anti-fox measures down in the garden or anything like that?
No. So we don't keep a compost heap anymore.
No.
And we definitely have foxes in the garden, but we don't feed them.
No.
We would occasionally have put food out for them.
Oh, really?
And so we don't feed them. And in fact, actually, our son was definitely feeding them when we were away. He hates them. No, he hates them.
Because of Coco?
Because they killed Coco, yeah absolutely. But we don't feed them anymore.
I hope he doesn't blame himself, Michelle.
Oh, no. He's no, absolutely not. Right. So, it was real sad. But no, I love foxes. I think they're beautiful.
Keep them wild, then, is the lesson here. And there will be circumstances. This is the thing about wildness, is that there will be circumstances over which we have no control. They are not domesticated. And getting cornered like that made the fox lash out. As you say, the bite itself wouldn't have been enough to do for Coco, but probably the shock of the moment was.
Completely. So, I mean, she went probably with a lot of excitement and enjoying
doing what she loved doing most, chasing things. When my time comes, Michelle, I hope I, like Coco, am doing what I love the most, or like Tommy Cooper. She's the dog equivalent of Tommy Cooper dying on stage, isn't she?
She's very much the dog equivalent. And actually, Tallulah. The other side of that story is Tallulah, and I know you're not talking about anything else, but this is 2 seconds.
Well, I'm happy to talk
Tallulah.
about beavers, but only if you've got a good story.
Bunny rabbits. So Tallulah died. She fell down a well. Standard Schnauzer fell down a well in France chasing bunny rabbits. So they both met very sad endings, but they were both very happy.
Was it a well in your environs? Was it a well near you?
Yeah, do you know what? It was actually the neighbour's well, but it's right outside our house, and they were irrigating crops, and so it wasn't fully covered, so poor Tallulah went down the well. So I think maybe we shouldn't have pets.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe we jinxed it?
No, I think you were very unlucky. I think you were very unlucky.
I think we have.
Poor old Tallulah, and indeed Coco. Well, good luck with the replacements. But I hope you've got insurance.
Well, I'm pleased to say, James, they're still both with us, very much alive and happy at this present moment in time.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. And there is somewhere inside all of that detail. There is a lesson, which is that foxes are foxes. Let them be foxes. Don't try and turn them into pets. So maybe we swing back with Michelle plus Chris. We swing back from feeding them, but we don't return to the days of thinking them as vermin or a danger. I wonder how many people just thought of what I thought of when Michelle mentioned the well, because I told you yesterday that my friend Scott, who has LBC running through his veins, he tells me things about this radio station that are not normal to have that level of knowledge. He hasn't been listening since 1973 because he wasn't born in 1973, but he has been listening for almost all of his natural life, and he listens to all of it, even the rubbish bits. And he dreams of the day when we do a phone-in, which is, have you ever fallen down a well? So that is his phone-in. That is, you say to him, what would be the perfect LBC phone-in? And he's heard them all. He's heard the ones about sanctions on Iran. He's heard the ones about, favourite front doors. He's heard the ones about Donald Trump, the ones about Boris Johnson. He's heard all the Brexit ones. You say, what would be, if you had to sum up your favourite phone-in that has never yet been done, what would it be? And he would say, have you ever fallen down a well? And Michelle got very close. Michelle got closer to Scott's dream phone-in than any other LBC caller that I'm aware of has ever got. This is usually the point at which I get a message saying, I think you'll find that Clive Bull did Have You Ever Fallen Down a Well in 1982, and Nick Abbott does it every other Tuesday. But I am not currently aware of any of us ever having done Have You Ever Fallen Down a Well. It's 12:46.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Time. I've started trying not to get distracted by your messages as much as I used to do, so I only turn to them in the breaks and stuff like that. But one of the great delights remains people who are either listening on catch-up and have forgotten that they're listening on catch-up, or people who've sent us messages by accident, or people who, I don't know quite how to explain this one from Jim, but in the middle of our conversation about foxes, Jim has messaged the programme at 12:48 today, so literally 1 minute ago, to say, would you, and he puts you in capital letters, get up at 5 and take a shower, then sit in a bus and drive for £15 an hour? To which I'd have to answer, probably not, Jim. No, not at this stage in my life. I mean, I can't really be answering all questions like that on the programme. It'd be like one of those things on Reddit, like those Ask Me Anythings. But no. So I presume that either Jim has a slightly eccentric view of how interactive radio works, or one of my colleagues has at some point in the last 24 hours been talking about striking bus drivers striking over the absolutely appalling conditions that they're expected to work in when the heat is off the charts. But anyway, Jim, if that question was intended just for me, then the answer is no, probably not, mate, not at this stage in my life. And when, frankly, I would have done almost anything for £15 an hour, I didn't have a driving licence, so I wouldn't have been able to drive a car, let alone a bus. But thanks for getting in touch. It's Joe in Kingston next. Joe, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Hello, Joe.
I love foxes like you
do too.
I had one little story when I was living in Acton quite a long time ago. I was stuck in a traffic jam and I saw a fox wait at a pedestrian crossing to cross the road. They waited on one side of the road, sitting like a dog, till somebody else, I was stuck in the traffic jam, so I saw all this, came down the other side of the road on the pavement, hit the button to turn the light red, and then the fox crossed the road when the light had gone red. It was so cute.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. It was just like, it made my day. It was amazing. It was dark. It was about 7 o'clock in the evening, I think. So Yeah, it was amazing. So we've got foxes around us, and I walk the dog in the evening. Around a little lane where we live, I live in Kingston now, we've got a family of foxes. The first one I spotted with a stumpy tail, and I mean stumpy, it's not a full brush, it's like half a tail.
Well, he's had an accident then.
Wow,
Don't
you think that?
Yeah.
I thought that, and then I talked to one of my neighbours, and we were talking about Stumpy the fox, and it turns out it's not just Stumpy, it's Stumpy and family, because we've seen more since then.
And they've all got stumpy foxes, stumpy tails.
They've all got stumpy tails. And she said it's a genetic thing. It's not just because they've got a tail trapped in a door or something.
So it's a birth defect then?
It's a birth defect.
That has been passed on. And I mean, I suppose an urban fox doesn't need a big bush, so it's not going to have any evolutionary advantage, is it?
No, so we feed them I accidentally drop dog treats when I'm walking the dog.
Of course, it slipped through your fingers. And did the fox follow you? And then you're training the foxes, really?
Well, they do seem to appear when we're walking in that certain part of the lane, and they will keep a safe distance. They'll always stay about 10, 20 feet away, because the dog's obviously like, what are you doing? She doesn't notice what's going on after the fox. She doesn't look behind her. We just keep going, and I can see the foxes behind us.
Because our little dog goes nuts about the foxes, but I've watched her. And when the foxes are young, which obviously comes around every year, I think that the foxes want to play with the dog. I don't think the little foxes... I've got Coco in my mind, Joe. I've got Michelle's dog, Coco.
Yeah.
Obviously...
I know, that was so sad.
It was very sad, although she certainly saw the funny side. I know that a fox will, a fox that is pregnant or a fox that is protecting cubs will... An adult fox, but I wonder whether there's that film, isn't there, The Fox and the Hound? I think that I'm pretty sure when I watch our little dog with the younger foxes, they're both playing, and then something happens a little bit further down the line, and the dog just chases the fox out of the garden and isn't playing at all. It's a weird one. So what would your dog do if it saw the fox? Just go after it?
If it depends. Sometimes she's on a long lead at the time, because when we're walking home. She'll just sit and look at it or stand and look at it. And it's almost say, you look like a dog, but you don't smell like a dog.
Yeah, the smell's
So I don't know what to do with you.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with you.
I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine that it's unknown for dogs and foxes to be more friendly to outside the realms of Disney animation, so you'd think it would go on. 12:54 is the time. Nobody's managed to bring beavers into this conversation, but we could perhaps save that for another day. Thank you, Joe. David is in Kings Lynn, not far, David, from the beavers.
I know, close to the beavers.
Just up the road at Pensthorpe. Have you been to Pensthorpe ever?
I've never been there. I'm actually on the way to see my father who lives in Kings Lynn, so just...
So it's not your neck of the woods, then?
No, well, I was born there.
Oh, lovely. Well, you should have been to Pensthorpe, mate. They've got beavers now at the moment. That's a lovely part of us. You just go up to Fakenham, through the Rudhams, through East Rudham, through Tatterset, and then you'll be in Fakenham before you know it. And then swing a left at that roundabout on the way to Wells, and you'll be at Pensthorpe, and you might see some beavers.
They're doing. Why not?
Anyway, what made you pick up the phone today?
Okay. We regularly get foxes in our garden. I actually live in Solihull. And I love them, but my wife always sort of chases them away. It even happened last night as soon as we got home. But this story is from about 18 months ago.
Go on.
My daughter Sarah was staying with us, and she has a dog called Nellie. And she'd got up early on a Sunday morning to let the dog out in the garden and realised there were some foxes in the garden, 3 of them. And she'd tried to shoo them off. And 2 of them would go, but the 3rd one wouldn't.
Right.
So as I came down the stairs in the morning, she was heading up. Said, "This is really weird, Dad. Can you go and check it out?"
Oh.
So I went and had a look at these. And this 3rd one just looked at me and came close. So I thought maybe he's hungry or thirsty.
Something not right here. Something's not right with this fox.
Yeah, it probably didn't seem right. So I got a sort of a bowl of water and put it in front of it. And it kind of dipped its nose in, but wasn't really interested, wasn't thirsty.
Yeah.
I took some ham out, gave it some food, it ignored the food. So I'm kind of, clearly this fox isn't well. So I managed to get hold of a vet. It was a Sunday morning, but managed to get hold of a vet who said, if you can actually catch this fox, bring it in, we'll take a look.
Blimey.
So I decided to give it a go. So I had a dog crate anyway that I use when I'm taking the dogs out. I put that in the garden and kind of ushered this fox towards the crate. I'd actually got this so close to it at this point that I was actually stroking its head and looking directly into his eyes. And beautiful, beautiful animal. Anyway, I managed.
Was it smelly? Was it very smelly?
No, not at all.
No, carry
not
on.
At all, no.
Just wondered.
I just managed to get him into the crate without much of a fuss. He didn't really struggle and just lay down in the crate as soon as I put him in there.
Right.
And I took him off to the vet. When I got to the vet said, "Don't bring him in. We'll come out and have a look in your car." So he came out to the car and kind of assessed it, and he says, "No, something's not right here. He's got a bit of a twitch. I think it's a neurological thing, so he's clearly not well, so there's not really anything I can do for him apart from put him to sleep."
Oh, Lord.
So
the story's taken an unexpected turn.
I know. So I get tie wraps and some...
Okay, the phone line's gone. It's pretty good. I was flipping King's Lynn, that's the thing. The signal always goes near King's Lynn, but I can't not hear the end of the story, so go on.
Yeah. So in front of me, he injected this poor fox, which didn't even try and escape from the needle, which was just laying on the back of the crate, and I just watched it die in front of me, and just burst into tears. It was horrible. So I needed to share that with you and everybody else this morning.
No, I'm glad you did. I mean, we trust the vet, do we? Are we sure he wasn't? I mean,
yeah. Well, do you know what? It tortures me a bit, actually.
Yeah, I bet it does.
When you say that, because I think about it and I think, well, what if he actually wasn't?
What if he was fine? He was just feeling a bit under the weather. He just had a sort of dodgy kebab or something the night before.
And not hungry, yes. Yeah. So.
Exactly. No, I'm sure the vet knew what he was doing. And presumably the vet meant well. He said, bring it in, I'll have a look at it. It might just need I don't know, it might need its toenails clipping or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. What did you tell? I mean, you went back home and told the family? Was your wife moved or was she relieved? We lost the phone line now because his wife didn't like foxes. I'm not weird. I was asking him that for a reason. She didn't like the foxes in the first place. How did your wife respond, David?
She didn't seem bothered at all.
Yeah, I knew it.
Oh, well.
I knew it. I've got one like that. Absolutely unbelievable. Thank you. I'd have cried, little foxy fella. That's a terrible business.
That is a sad story.
Isn't it a sad story? Yeah, all human life is here, and indeed most wildlife as well. If you missed any, I think I was right about Chris Packham, but I may have been wrong, in which case my apologies. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the LBC app, where you can also stay up to date with all the latest news, videos and opinions. You can listen to a range of podcasts, including James O'Brien Daily, the best bits from my LBC show every day. So do download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 4 on LBC, it's Simon Marks, who is, of course, in for Tom Swarbrick, who is in for Nick Ferrari. But now it's the original. It's Sheila Fogarty.
Oh, thanks. The OG. Thanks very much indeed.
James O'Brien on LBC.